Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I'm starting a little early because I want to get the segment out before my guest gets in. It was not necessarily on the marquee, but it's on the marquee now, and it's kind of just came to me on the fly. So hopefully it works out the way I want it to work out. Look, wherever you are, if you're under the sound of this voice, you have my thanks for being under the sound of this voice. It is Tuesday, September 17th. This month has gone by pretty fast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. This segment is going to be called, rather provocatively, Ben Shapiro is fucking Charlie Kirk's corpse. Ben Shapiro is fucking Charlie Kirk's corpse, or I should say Charlie Kirk's baby, to make it even that more dramatic. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? This picture was released either today or yesterday. Since Charlie Kirk is no longer here, they are investing money into Talking Points Bill, meaning Bill Shapiro, I think like $1 million. And you've had J.D. Vance run the show, but you've also had this picture come out. Ben Shapiro and a bunch of other Zionists. Just to be clear on what this is. Pro-genocide supporters. All of them. All right. Why do I say this is Ben Shapiro fucking Charlie Kirk's baby? Because what we know now is something radically different than what we knew before. This is Nick Fuentes, and I can't believe I'm going to play this clip, but I'm going to play this clip because Nick Fuentes actually makes a really good point on this clip. Listen to what he says here.
Whether he chooses to confront me or not, whether he has dignity and honor or not, it's just a matter of time. My ideas are already there. I've already impregnated your organization. I took Turning Point USA and I fucked it. I took your organization, I took your baby, Turning Point USA, and I fucked it. And I've been fucking it. And that's why it's filled with groypers. That's why your whole crew, that's why the people around you, that's why your chapter presidents, that's why your attendees, they're all groypers. So whether you choose to confront me or not over the honor of your Turning Point USA, it's immaterial to me. I'd like it. I just get a sick satisfaction out of it because I like to win. But we're already there. And this whole ideology, Zionism plus free market, it's dead either way. You know it. I know it. Pretty much the whole world knows it's over. In the last 7 years, who's moved closer to who? Could anybody accuse me of stealing Charlie Kirk's ideas? No. Has Charlie Kirk every step of the way moved in degree closer to me? Tried to ape my bit, my...
He has a way of expressing himself that trips me out like nobody's business. I couldn't imagine coming on saying, I fucked it. I fucked your baby. I just fucked your baby. Just got into it. It's good that he's fucking Turning Points because according to him, he's not necessarily hooking up with any females. That being said, he has a point. He has a point. Candace Owens pointed out that Charlie Kirk's position was wavering on Israel. So much so that they joined in the Hamptons for an intervention. I think you've all seen that clip. Bill Ackman has even verified the fact that that meeting took place. And apparently Netanyahu offered like $100 million for Charlie Kirk to double down on the issue of genocide. Hey, man, I need you to support genocide. I need you to do it vigorously. You have all of these impressionable minds, and I need you to get these races on board for genocide. Apparently Kirk turned that down. Candace Owens, after that meeting, pointed out this meeting that took place with Megyn Kelly in this interview. I'm going to play this because it's important.
And if I were to be treated, I'm an American citizen. Yes, I want Israel to win. Yes, I'm a Christian. But like some of the mess, and you've seen how I've been treated, Megan, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating.
It's
been so unfair. They were coming after you after Turning Point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions, not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go, I mean, you saw it, Megan. It was trending on Twitter, thousands of tweets and text messages. And if I were to be charitable and generous, I will say the people that are attacking me are in a hyper paranoid state.
And why are they attacking him? Because he, oh, you didn't see it. Damn it. Let's try this one more time. Let me play this one more time. I want to get this right. I'll fix it in on the back end. If I can get this to flip over, why can't I get you to flip over? Let's try this one more time. I'm sorry about that. Stupid StreamYard. That wasn't me. That was actually StreamYard. All right, let's try this one more time.
I'm an American citizen. Yes, I want Israel to win. Yes, I'm a Christian. But like some of the mess, and you've seen how I've been treated, Megan, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating.
It's
been so unfair. They were coming after you after Turning Point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
Though. No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go, I mean, you saw it, Megan. It was trending on Twitter, thousands of tweets and text messages. And if I were to be charitable and generous, I will say the people that are attacking me are in a hyper paranoid state because they're at war, and war tends to make things black and white, and you're a hammer looking for a nail. So I'm trying to be charitable, Megan. Literally, I'm trying to cut as much slack as I can, right? Like, okay, what would it be like if all of a sudden I'm starting to see a pattern of behavior similar to what my grandparents saw in 1930s Germany online? How would I behave? So that's like my charitable kind of overcompensation spirit.
It sounds like, and that could be wrong, but it sounds like, especially if that meeting took place after the Hamptons, that he was being pressured. And why would you need to pressure somebody if indeed the person was already on your side? Now, he is saying, I love Israel, I love this. Obviously, he's being attacked. Obviously, they're hitting him for it. And obviously, at the end of it, he pointed out how there was no leeway. He didn't feel as if he could deviate from that particular point of view. What did he say behind the scenes? All right. Megyn Kelly at one point said that she felt like maybe a sign for her point of view on this. This is Tucker talking about the behind the scenes conversation he had with Charlie Kirk.
Basically made it also. I was shocked and sickened by the reaction of the ghoulish and really repulsive reaction of the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to Charlie's death. Basically made it all about him and all about his country, immediately trying to take the energy, the sadness, the grief that people felt over Charlie's murder and redirect it towards support for whatever project he's involved in. And by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu is not the same as the nation of Israel at all. Bibi is despised by many people in Israel. And if you know people who live there, you know that that's true. There are huge divisions within the Israeli government. I mean, there are certain parts of the intel world in Israel that do not support some things that Benjamin Netanyahu has done recently. So it's not the same as attacking Israel, attacking Bibi. But I don't think I've ever seen anything lower than his attempt to hijack Charlie's memory and use it for his own political ends, particularly because what he said was completely untrue. Charlie didn't hate Jews. He loved Jews. He had tons of friends who were Jews. He loved the state of Israel. He loved going there. He did not like Bibi Netanyahu, and he said that to me many times, and he said it to people around him many times. He felt that Bibi Netanyahu was a very destructive force. He was appalled by what was happening in Gaza. He was, above all, resentful that he believed Netanyahu was using the United States to prosecute his wars for the benefit.
Now that is interesting. That is interesting. Think about what I've just told you, and think about what these right-wingers who knew Charlie Kirk very closely just said. Candace Owens coming out, talking about Kirk's point of view on what was taking place in Gaza. Megyn Kelly, Charlie Kirk himself, right there in this kind of weird hostage situation that he seemed to be in. And Tucker Carlson, who had conversations behind the scenes with Charlie Kirk. regardless of what he was saying, it seems as if he was wavering on this idea of full support for Israel, or at the very least full support for Bibi Netanyahu, and yet people around him was pressuring him intensely to keep supporting this particular genocide, this particular cause, in a way that he felt like he couldn't have any leeway in backing away from. So meaning what he was saying openly as a mouthpiece was different than what he was thinking in his mind, and what he was saying some of the people around him, especially people who, let's say, might have been more skeptical of what was taking place in the way that Israel was using the United States and vice versa, I suppose, to support genocide, the murder of babies, the starvation of women and children. Even in that video, he compared it to 1934. He's talking about the Nazi extermination of Jews. So my point is, Fuentes is right. Many of the people that were at Turning Point apparently, maybe, had moved into a particular direction. All right. So when you look at this clip, or this video, or this image, what does it make you think? Am I right? Is this a situation? Let's go to a bigger image. Try to find a bigger image of this. Okay, it's a better image. Full of Zionists, Charlie Kirk's name below it, investing millions of dollars into talking points. All of them pro-genocide. If Nick Fuentes is making the argument that he fucked Charlie Kirk's baby, which is Talking Points USA, what is this? Is this not the same? And is this not even worse? Nick Fuentes was making the argument that my ideas have infected your organization. You're moving closer to my position, not the other way around. That's an argument, per se, meaning my argument is better than yours. However grotesque the argument is, right? But he's making the argument, my argument is better than yours. Charlie Kirk is barely dead. He's very dead, but I'm saying his body is barely cold. And despite the fact that his position, apparently, if there's any truth to be believed by all of these people who are around him who knew his intimate thoughts on this particular issue, and considering the meeting actually did take place where they were pressuring him in order to support Israel, even a re-education camp, because they wanted him to effectively come to Israel, and of course the bribe with $100 million. If that is indeed true, that his position on this was not this vociferous baby killer position, but it was, I don't like what these guys are doing, but I don't feel like I can move on this. Then what the hell is this? Then what the hell is this? The idea that Ben Shapiro swoops in, invests into the organization that Charlie Kirk ran, and fills it with Zionists, baby killers, pro-starvation, pro-rape, pro-bombing tents, all of them. Is that not Ben Shapiro fucking Charlie Kirk's baby? Is that not what that is? That's grotesque. That's grotesque. And, considering who Ben Shapiro is, I'm not necessarily shocked that something like this would take place. But they are effectively co-opting a dead man's organization and retooling it for their own ends before his body is even in the ground. That's amazing. That's amazing. Meaning it is very hard to get this notion of the revelations of what he was actually thinking. This is where his mind was going. This is where his point of view actually was, in a direction different than what Ben Shapiro is effectively doing by, on some level, I don't know how far this is going to go, but swooping in to Talking Points USA and ensuring that the Netanyahu position of the world is maintained in TPU. That's grotesque. That is grotesque. That is taking a dump on Charlie Kirk. That is, in the words of, what's his name, fucking his baby. And not doing it from an idea position or ideal point of view, especially considering it sounds like Charlie Kirk was rejecting many of those ideas that Ben Shapiro and all of those other Zionist, pro-genocide cretins agree with. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's just an amazing thing. Good. I finished in time. I want to bring in my guests. We are joined with Warwick Powell. How you doing this evening? You doing okay?
I'm well. And what about yourself, Jamal?
I am doing okay. Dragging a little bit of ass, but I'm okay. All things being equal. Warwick Powell. He is adjunct professor in Queensland University of Technology, chairman of Smart Trade Networks group of companies, and president of Data Integrity and Supply Chains Association Incorporated. Powell, Warwick, you are the person I want to talk to today. In fact, you've been the person I wanted to talk to for like a week. So thank you for joining me today.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to go through your article, and just for context for the audience. On September 6th, Putin's advisor, what is his name? Anton Kobakov. In a meeting, he said this, and I want the audience to be able to see it. They're going to have to read it, but I want them to see it just to give context to why I'm bringing this up and what I'm trying to get at on this.
Сейчас пытается поменять правила на рынке золота и криптовалют. Вспомните, какой у них долг. 35 триллионов долларов. В общем-то, это два альтернативных валютному сегменту мировых рынка. Действия Вашингтона в этом направлении отчетливо демонстрируют одну из главных американских задач. Они очень хотят решить проблему снижения доверия к доллару. США, как это было и в 30-е, и в 70-е годы, будут решать свои финансовые проблемы за счет всего мира, загоняя всех куда? В криптовалютное облако. Со временем, когда часть госдолга США будет размещена в стейблкоинах, США обесценит этот долг. Еще раз простыми словами. У них сейчас валютный 35-триллионный долг, они его загоняют в крипту, в облако, обесценивают и начинают с нуля.
Now, you, Warren, was prescient because you wrote this article before this gentleman made that statement. And the article is named The Genius Act and America's Engineered Instability. I'll put it at the bottom of the video after I cut the video. Both of you seem to be making a very similar point, that Donald Trump has effectively created this stablecoin backed or associated with the US Treasury and is trying to, on some level, devalue the US dollar, or at the very least, he's arguing devalue the dollar. I think your argument was more so it will make, it's like a Ponzi scheme. It's kind of like the 2008 crash. You are creating treasury bonds on something that is fundamentally unstable in a way that the rest of the world can see it to be unstable and even comes across as somewhat desperate. I don't think your argument was that it was devaluation. Your argument was more so it will get to the point that other countries will look at the US debt as being fundamentally unstable and that they would stop, let's say, supplying products for that dollar because they would see it as being an unstable product. Give me your take on this and help me understand this, because I got to be honest, when I heard that, I was like, okay, I don't quite understand what is being said by this gentleman. I read your article. I think I understand your article, but I need a little bit of help to get there because I'm not an economist, and some of it was a little bit over my head.
To be honest with you, Jamal, most economists wouldn't understand this stuff either, because most economics actually doesn't deal with the piping of domestic or national, let alone international financial systems. Mainstream economics actually doesn't have a genuine theory of money, in truth. And so you have to look elsewhere to try to understand how the system actually works. So if we start at the foundational point, and that is this issue of the US dollar or the US bonds, the treasuries. The treasuries are issued to cover the gap between the amount of new liquidity that is injected into the economy by way of congressional funding appropriations, in other words, legal funding decisions, and the amount of liquidity that is extracted out of the system by way of taxation. So whatever the gap is covered by the issuance of treasuries. Now, what treasuries in effect does is that it enables holders of US dollars to exchange those dollars, which are not interest bearing, for securities which are interest bearing, and thereby earn more dollars on the back of those securities that they hold. The upside historically is that those securities are liquid, which means they are as good as dollars in the sense that you can sell them whenever you need, if you need dollars for whatever purposes it is that you need dollars for, and that they have been in effect they fulfilled the role of the zero risk security within a global valuation system. So whatever it is that the US Treasuries market is doing is seen to be the zero risk base. The problem now is that by enabling the treasuries to be used as security for stable coins, you're introducing a level of instability that historically hasn't existed. And you're doing that because the stable coin is ostensibly pegged to the US dollar, but there are no guarantees that the peg holds, which means that you have an environment where the stable coin that has now been created off the back of the security, which is the treasury, may or may not hold that dollar to dollar value. And that has feedback loop effects into the function of the treasuries market as the market of zero risk or risk-free assets. And that's where it introduces significant instabilities into the global marketplace, particularly when there are large amounts of US dollars circulating in the global system. So you got to remember that when dollars come into existence and they begin to circulate, so just think of the global economy as a bunch of pipes and buckets, right? Dollars come into existence. They come into existence by virtue of decisions of Congress or by credit creation by commercial banks. So new dollars come into existence. They begin to circulate when they're used for spending purposes. And then eventually some of those dollars ends up in accounts owned by foreign entities. Because the dollars are used to buy foreign currency, which is then used to settle the imports from other countries. And so other countries' central banks now accumulate substantial amount of dollars. And what do they do with those dollars that they've accumulated? Well, they need to cycle them back into the system. Now, they can hold them as cash, of course, but holding those dollars as cash is not an interest-earning place to hold a lot of those dollars. So instead of that, they buy US treasuries because the treasuries will deliver you something as good as cash, but which is now interest bearing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, of course, that central banks do is that they use those dollars to buy other assets, or companies that want to buy assets will then purchase US dollars with their national currency and then proceed to purchase things like stocks on the stock exchange, other financial instruments, derivatives, real estate even, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a circulation system, and those dollars need to end up somewhere as they move around, and this is one place that they end up as a mechanism to actually manage liquidity. So the use of bonds is a way of also bleeding dollars out of the global system. Right? So it's an important liquidity management tool historically, but we're starting to see if we go down this stable coins path, where we're going to end up is a position where an issuer of stable coins uses US dollars to buy treasuries, then uses those treasuries as security to issue new stable coins, and then uses those stable coins to buy more treasuries, and away we go. So it does create a liquidity cycle for treasuries. So, we're starting to get that circulation effect, but it increasingly has less and less to do with what I guess I would call the real economy. So the economy of services and goods production. and the intensification of the circulation of fictitious capital and money, US dollars, chasing other digital assets will, of course, lead to, well, actually, it'll lead to a further absorption of money capital into the financial markets, as opposed to seeing that money capital mobilized to support things like building new factories, installing new equipment, buying new equipment, training people, and actually leading to something of a redevelopment of a manufacturing base in North America.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So someone buys a stable coin. That stable coin is pegged to $1 under the treasury. Meaning, am I getting this right? The moment
it should be, but there's actually no guarantees. And over the last couple of years, the stable coins that have been issued have experienced many occasions where they've lost the peg. Right, so they've dropped to 99 cents and things like that. So that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking billions of dollars, those little slippages are actually quite significant. So the extent to which the stable coin is consistently and always equal to $1, that's not a guarantee, and that's part of the reason why the introduction of stable coins as what is in effect a derivative on top of a security creates risks in the global financial system.
So it's not, just so I'm clear, it's not someone buys a stable coin and the stable coin automatically goes to a treasury. It's more so that the stable coin is supposed to be pegged to the dollar in the context of.
So what happens is that institutions that have dollars can then buy treasuries and then use those treasuries as security for the issuance of stable coins. So treasuries are sitting still, if you will. Now the issue is that when there's another set of issues. So treasuries are time limited securities, right? So they mature. Whether they're short, medium, or long-term treasuries. So at some point, those treasuries mature, and the holders of them need to come good with the dollar, the original amount paid for the treasury. When you've got a system where you're starting to create many layers of separation between the security and its subsequent derivatives, or derivatives that ultimately rely upon the foundational security, you're creating intensified risks, because you can get a misalignment between the timing of maturation and the fact that a stable coin is not time limited. So a stable coin, once it's given life, is as good as a dollar, so long as it remains pegged to the dollar, and it is out in the wild. It's been injected into the economic system, into circulation, and in fact, it could, I think, be used to purchase more treasuries, which then enables another round of stable coins to be created as well. So it's a layered cake that sort of feeds on itself. I wrote a much longer article about all of this on Substack, which had an image of the Ouroboros, which is the mythical snake eating itself, and in a sense, that's sort of where we're getting to.
That is okay. So, I know what I see where my misunderstanding is.
Let me try and describe it this way, Jamal. It is the problem with finance is that, in a sense, it's entirely abstract, right? So it's like having a security, something that backs whatever it is that you're making a promise on, and then you start writing new IOUs, and then you use those IOUs as security to then write other IOUs.
I see.
So eventually, we've got a bunch of IOUs stacked up on each other, with somebody holding some IOU down the track, hoping that or believing that it's a very stable IOU, because you'll be able to redeem that for whatever the IOU was for. But as you get further and further away from the foundational security, the risks that these IOUs can't be redeemed, can't be made good, is that it actually increases over time. And we saw an example of that in 2007, 2008, with the progressive explosion of derivatives and associated instruments that ultimately couldn't come good because to put it very simply, there was way too many of them out there making claims on reality, and reality just simply didn't have the productive capacity to meet the obligations that was being placed upon it. So, this is sort of the risk that this particular approach to stable coins faces.
So you can get a situation where the stable coin goes to 95 cents on the dollar. Someone, or let's say a group of people, countries even, have invested trillions, or even let's say hundreds of billions of dollars into it. And that 5% differential could be catastrophic to the way the system operates. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, well, it could be. It creates, again, it creates instabilities when these systems need to be stable, particularly if they're being used to settle cross-border transactions and price cross-border transactions. And so in the article that you showed before, my basic argument is that I don't have an issue with the technology per se at all. In fact, I think that there are many potential good uses of this kind of technology. The issue is the institutional framework that brings these technologies to the table and then enables them to create certain kinds of things. And the Genius Act, I think, is hyper-financialized and creates more risks than it solves problems. And if you were in the global south, for example, this is another reason to run a million miles and divest yourself from US dollars to the extent that you can. And I say to the extent that you can because many countries still have debt obligations denominated in dollars, which means they need to have ways of servicing those loans. And many of them also need dollars to undertake other kinds of transactions, right? But a structured, strategic plan is necessary for global south countries in particular to wean themselves off the dollar system. And the main reason for that, on top of the weaponization that's taken place already in the last decade or so, is to manage your exposure to the kinds of risks that I think this new system is likely to give rise to. Fortunately, we are seeing some of those institutions being built, whether it's the SCO Development Bank, the ongoing expansion of the new development bank under the umbrella of BRICS, etc.
Do you see this as, do you agree with Kobakov with this idea of that this is some kind of scheme to devalue the dollar? I've heard other economists make this case also, that the United States under no circumstances would ever be able to pay back the 37 trillion. And by the way, that's going to go higher, especially after the midterms. And so we might be looking at $40 trillion in very short time. Do you think
there are two issues here. The first one is this question of liquidity. So the United States is not going to run out of dollars, period. It can, because it creates the dollars. So in that sense, it can always pay back maturing treasuries. That is actually not the issue, right? So if people think that the nation is going to go broke, they're in a sense barking up the wrong tree. That's not to say that there aren't major problems in this particular system of money creation. And the problems come from the fact that it actually reinforces systemic instabilities and inequalities by the way that it rewards wealthy institutions by enabling them to essentially hold their wealth in bonds and be rewarded for that. And so what you see over time, because it's not an ordinary person on the street who owns bonds, right, earning interest. Right. The institutions that own bonds are, banking institutions, retirement funds, mutual funds, and those sorts of things, as well as organizations that essentially act on behalf of high net worth individuals. And so this is a system that reinforces the widening wealth gap in the United States. Now, we see that in many different aspects, and the foundational evidence of that is in the concentration of ownership of capital, whether it's by way of ownership of shares on the stock exchange, where, according to the Fed, 93% of market capitalization value in the United States is actually owned by 10% of Americans, and half of that is actually owned by the top 1%. There's a bunch of data which shows over the last 40 years that the ownership of capital across industries, from manufacturing through to services, et cetera, has progressively concentrated, where something like 70 to 80% of capital is actually owned by 5 to 15% of capitalists. And so we've got a system here that actually has built in acceleration of systemic instability by way of suppressing wages of the vast majority of Americans and boosting the asset wealth of a very small number of Americans.
Wow. Yeah. One of the arguments that you made in the article was that one of the problems with this particular system is that the US will have a ton of liquidity, meaning they will have dollars coming out of the yin-yang, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to buy anything with those dollars when countries start to effectively explain that part, because I was fascinated by that part.
So if you hold dollars, and dollars, of course, are useful in the United States. That's where dollars are most useful, because they are the legal tender. And if you hold dollars, you can exchange them for all sorts of things. So holders of dollars, and when there is significant liquidity in the system, and as I mentioned, the distribution of those holdings is very concentrated. So what do wealthy people do? Well, wealthy people don't go down the street and spend money at restaurants much more than anyone else. They obviously spend more per capita, but they still only go out, so many times a week. What they do is that they accumulate capital assets and financial assets, and the evidence of that clearly is inflation in asset valuations. And you see a very strong correlation between system liquidity, for instance, measured by M2, money supply growth, and the trajectory of valuations and market capitalization of the New York Stock Exchange or the S&P 500. We see very tight correlations between system liquidity changes and property values, especially a correlation between the rate of acceleration of credit growth. So it's not just the rate of credit growth, it's whether the rate of credit growth is accelerating or not. And if it's accelerating, that feeds into asset valuation growth or asset inflation in housing. So these are the kinds of dynamics that are set off once you have this sort of system liquidity that hasn't been reined back in. So one of the reasons why taxation exists is actually to enable financial authorities or governments to seek to manage system liquidity. Often people say that when there's lots of money chasing too few goods, of course they say inflation occurs, but that sort of line, in a sense, masks a number of very different kinds of inflation. So I described asset inflation, which is a lot of system liquidity chasing a relatively small number of capital assets. But other kinds of inflation, such as inflation for food, that's actually not because there's too much money chasing food. It's because food systems have been fundamentally disrupted, and you have a concentration of ownership in food systems, so that supply chain power enables certain sections of the supply chain to increase prices. So there are different kinds of drivers to price rises within capitalism, and the monetary circuits tend to actually drive asset valuation far more than they drive inflation in goods in particular.
I thought that the purpose of the stable coin or attaching it to the treasury, I mean, short of Donald Trump's kids being invested heavily in it and getting a huge amount of $2 billion from Gulf states But that's a whole different corruption scheme that Trump is running with us. But I thought part of the argument was that by attaching it to the Treasury, that it would make it stable, and which is why they use the propagandistic term stablecoin. Is that not true? What would create a situation where it becomes unpegged to the dollar?
Well, attaching it to the dollar is what's meant to make it stable, not to a Treasury note, because you've got to remember the Treasury note's value fluctuates, and it fluctuates against the dollar. So the idea, in theory, is that a Treasury is a solid security, and therefore is it's liquid. So it's a useful counterpart to have as a reserve when somebody issues stablecoins. So if you in the old days, so in the years immediately after the Second World War, and I'll use a case of the UK, or was it just? It was during the war. The UK Treasury actually issued its own note, a Treasury note, and it was they thought it would be less than the Bank of England note, and it was printed on much worse paper. It didn't look as pretty. It certainly was a lot smaller. All those things. But the market was willing to accept that the Treasury note was as good as a Bank of England note because of the backing of the Treasury. Now, that's the theory, of course, behind using treasuries as the foundation point for these stable coins. But you do wonder why you need to use a treasury as security for a stable coin and not just the dollar itself, right? And introducing this intermediating, time-constrained security that is traded in its own right creates a level of complexity and risk, I think, that doesn't actually aid the stablecoin story. Stablecoins already, as I mentioned, have had episodes of decoupling from the dollar, and I don't think any of this makes the situation any better. So it's in a sense, the administration was forced into this position because of the public debate in North America concerning central bank digital currencies and the issues around privacy that approach gives rise to. And in the lead up to last November's election, President Trump, whilst as a candidate, essentially came onto the side of those who oppose central bank digital currencies. But the minute he did that, the risk was leaving the United States languishing from a technology or a financial technology point of view. And the alternative then was to become a stablecoins advocate. So, you know, in some respects, the politics of CBDC privacy in 2023, 2024 laid the groundwork for this particular decision.
Speculate for me. Where do you think this goes? I mean, for one, do you think other countries are going to invest in something like this? Or do you think that the other countries are going to look at this as you described in your article, desperation by the US, in which case they're going to be more likely to pull out of treasuries or stop investing in treasuries?
Look, it makes countries more wary, and it will, I think, reinforce or consolidate the view of central banks across the world that they need to diversify their portfolios more than they have historically, and certainly in the last 20 to 30 years. So I think this consolidates many of the reasons that have underpinned central bank diversification, and we are going to see a continuation of this process of currency multipolarity that has been unfolding for a while now, but has really picked up a head of steam in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're saying de-dollarization.
To an extent, but you know, there's a lot of dollars in the system, and the United States economy is still an important economy in the world, and American citizens doing business in the United States will still use dollars. So until all these dollars, in a sense, get bled out of the system, you know, they are in the system somewhere. So when people talk about so-and-so, quote, dumping treasuries, unquote, there are two possible things that are happening, actually. The first one is that they're simply not refinancing into new treasuries when old ones expire through maturation. That's one. I wouldn't quite call that dumping, but they're certainly not renewing their commitment to that particular asset. And the second thing that may be happening is that there is a modest amount of selling, but we can see that the prices of treasuries really hasn't behaved in ways that you'd think would be the case if somebody like a Chinese central bank was, quote, dumping them on the market. Now, of course, bear in mind that when these instruments are sold, someone else owns them. Right? So selling treasuries means you get dollars, because that's what you're doing. You are exchanging your treasuries for US dollars. So you're not really ditching the dollar per se. What you're doing is converting your US dollar denominated holdings from a treasury bond back into US dollars, which you then may use to purchase gold or whatever it happens to be. But don't forget that whoever sold you the gold now has the dollars. So the dollars don't disappear out of the system. The only time they disappear out of the system is when they're taxed out of the system. Right? They temporarily are withdrawn from circulation when they're swapped for treasuries, but until they're taxed, these dollars are floating around in the global system somewhere. They might not be in circulation. They might be, in effect, sitting dormant in accounts, but they are still out there in the wild, in the global network.
Oh, so they don't vanish. They're always there.
Until they're taxed out of existence, they don't vanish. The other way that they disappear is when people pay their loans back. Right? So that's the other way that dollars are taken out of the system.
But even then, somebody has them. I mean,
no, they're basically gone because, well, remember, it's a cycle. So the system's producing new dollars as it takes dollars out.
Right. Okay. 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 I guess I was thinking in terms of if I owed you $1 million, which I don't have, but let's say at some point I get $1 million and I pay you the $1 million, you're holding on to the $1 million.
Well, if it's private exchange, the dollars still exist in the system. If you pay the bank back because the bank created that money for you, that money is taken out of the system.
Right. Because what do they call it? Fragmental currency. Effectively, the banks make money out of thin air of sorts.
Yes. So they make adjustments on your ledger, they credit your account, and then eventually, as you pay the money back, the money is withdrawn from circulation in effect.
If you think that the U.S. or if your point of view is that the U.S. was kind of forced into this position, why do you call it desperate?
Well, because I think that they're scrambling now to generate circuits of demand for treasury notes, because demand for treasuries is a bit flat, and other countries are taking a step back a bit. They're struggling with the auctions, and so creating another use for treasuries to enable private institutions now to issue quasi dollars, if you will, or dollar based promissory notes or bank checks is a way in which demand for treasuries, particularly from the domestic market, can be generated.
Is any other country doing this? Anything similar to this?
Hong Kong has introduced some laws concerning stable coins, but Hong Kong's laws are much more conservative in a sense. They actually require dollars, either US dollars, Hong Kong dollars, or RMB to literally be held in escrow. So that's Hong Kong's approach. So that when someone comes back to you with a stable coin that says, give me a US dollar, there is a US dollar to give them. So Hong Kong's approach is quite different.
One last question on this. Nothing is backing the dollar. So how does an instrument that is being effectively conjured out of thin air, backed by something that's conjured out of thin air? That part, I don't quite get that part either. It's not like the dollar is backed by gold or the dollar is backed by something else. It's effectively backed by oil and oil being appropriated in dollars. But that's not entirely even true now. So Saudi Arabia has yuans that it would allow. So
this question of backing is an interesting one, right? So what do we mean by that? What we really mean by that is how confident that we can exchange dollars for something else in a relatively consistent way, and have confidence that we can do that at some point in the undefined future. Right?
Right.
That's really all it is. And so in an ideal world, I know that for a given unit of monetary account, $1, which I can exchange for 1 unit of X today, that in 6 months' time, I can be reasonably confident that I'll get 1 unit of X in 6 months' time. And in 12 months' time, it'll be close to 1 unit of X as well. Now, interestingly, inflation is actually not a bad thing, so long as it's not too high. Because your problem in economic systems is that if we have, if currency in effect is existing in a deflationary environment where you can actually buy more with it tomorrow, your incentive is actually to hold it today and not spend it. And economic systems actually rely upon circulation. Right? So if everybody stops spending, the system grinds to a halt. So modest amounts of inflation actually aren't bad things for monetary systems, because that takes away the incentive to hold today with a view to spend tomorrow. So look, that's sort of how these systems kind of work. And the problem with the US dollar, in a sense, is that the US doesn't produce things, services, or goods, material goods, that the rest of the world can't get elsewhere, by and large. And if the US is unreliable, undependable, fickle, capricious, or whatever it is, in other words, just unstable and difficult to deal with, you then start to think to yourself, well, look, I'll get my oil from someone else, or I'll get my machines from someone else. And so the backing, in a sense, comes from the institutions of the state. The extent to which the state ultimately will enforce the IOU, because it is just an IOU, but the backing is the fact that it is an enforceable IOU.
One last question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Would the U.S. ever pay this money back, the $37 trillion, which is going to go up even higher after the election, after the midterms?
Well, the system, in a sense, by virtue of its very nature, means that it will largely increase. And the reason it increases is because the system needs net monetary growth for capital accumulation to take place. So this is how capitalism works. The system requires credit to be created and injected, new liquidity, so more liquidity in the system today than there was yesterday, to be able to finance the production of things, and the circulation of goods and services, the repayment of interest, etc., etc. And so the system, by design, necessitates what is in effect a continued growth in liquidity. Now, as liquidity growth is governed and managed imperfectly, because it's hard to know exactly how much liquidity is in the system on any given day, right, we get some fluctuations. But efforts to pay the debt back will actually see that amount of money taken out of the system. So if you were to repay $37 trillion tomorrow, in effect, you are engaging in a massive systemic liquidity management exercise, which has massive implications for the system.
You're sucking that money out of the economy, basically.
Yeah. Because you pay it back. Because you pay it back with taxation.
I know, but that means we're going to be $100 trillion in debt at some point.
Yeah. So the system needs dollars being created. As dollars get destroyed or taken out of circulation, new dollars have to go into the system. If you paid it all back, and you paid that back by taxing, you've literally withdrawn all that liquidity from the system.
I know, but Warwick, that means that we're going to be at $100 trillion.
Yeah.
Like, it's inevitable under that model.
Yeah. So again, as I said, liquidity isn't the issue, because you can keep doing this, because these are literally legally enforceable IOUs. The problem is the way the circulation system works, that distorts, if you will, the distribution of wealth. And the consequences of the distribution of wealth is actually what destabilizes the system. So my argument is that as wealth disparities grow, and as capital ownership continues to be held in smaller and smaller hands, that households are under more and more pressure, their real incomes don't grow, household debts increase. We've seen data in the last 24 hours showing that I think some 48% of American consumption expenditure comes from the top 10% of households. At some point, a system that looks like that is a system that has a lot of increasingly desperate people who may get very, very angry. And now what happens, and we talked about this last time, right? What happens in that tinderbox? Well, I don't know. But there are some interesting things that sort of perhaps paint a picture. So something that I noticed last year that's been growing in demand, an incredible rate of growth, is bulletproof glass. Bulletproof glass is projected now to grow at a compounded annual growth rate, sales of bulletproof glass at somewhere of a 9-point-something% per annum compounded. I mean, this is huge. Really? Now, I think we both know that it's not poor people buying bulletproof glass.
No.
So these are sort of symptoms of a systemic problem that has seen financialization drive wealth inequalities to a point where households aren't even experiencing modest real income growth. They're actually experiencing zero real income growth, and some of them are actually going backwards. Because one of the interesting things when you start to look at the inflation numbers for different types of things, you find that services, for example, are going through the roof. They're costing a fortune. Health, education. Now, what does that do in the end? Well, poor people will die earlier, and poor people won't get an education. So it reinforces the fundamental reasons why people don't have social mobility. No education, bad health.
This is happening in all of Western governments. I mean, where the debt seems to just be inexorably going up.
Well, it's not the fact that it's going up per se, it's how it circulates in certain parts of the system. Right. So, as I said, liquidity isn't the thing to worry about per se. You can always find the money because you produce it. That's not the worry. The worry is what I've just described. Right. How it totally sends the system in a inequitable spiral, and all systems, and capitalism in particular, are unequal by design or by institutional history. But when you actually start seeing the disparity grow, and poor people actually getting poorer, not just relatively poorer compared to the wealthy people, but in absolute terms getting poorer, then you start having some real problems. If you drive around parts of the United States and go through some of the smaller towns and cities, they're dead. They're totally dead. I watched a documentary night before last about the history of Atlantic City. I mean, it had a glorious history once, and it tried to refashion itself as an East Coast casino city, failed, and now it's a nothing, right? It's got real, all the problems of urban decay. This is what's going on now. What happened now after the financial crisis? Well, as people couldn't pay their mortgages, they walked away, right? So in the US, this non-recourse loans, they just walked away. Who bought all these things up? For the first time ever, hedge funds and private equity funds got into residential property. BlackRock is the substantial landlord now in America. It wasn't before 2007. And once you've got hedge funds now controlling the housing stock, rents will be priced in a way that makes their shareholders what they want, but it will, again, reinforce and consolidate the systemic problems that have been bubbling away now for many decades.
Warwick, I always get a lesson from you, and I always appreciate that lesson. And I hope the audience does also. This is a fantastic breakdown. Thank you for this. Warwick Powell, adjunct professor of Queensland University of Technology, chairman of Smart Trade Networks Group of Companies, and president of Data Integrity and Supply Chain Association, Incorporated. You are fantastic. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you again, Jamal.
Have a good one. Thank you. Wow. That, I got to be honest, a lot of that is above my head. I think I understand the basics of it, though, for the stablecoin and for the standpoint of this consolidation of wealth, and almost like a whirlwind of consolidation of wealth, where the money just continuously goes to the top. The poor gets poorer, the rich gets richer, with an inability of the system to kind of compensate. Again, this is Peter Turchin's work, where the elites are not in a position to do anything about it. Well, they are, but they don't. And because they don't, you get this friction in a society. Great breakdown. Shout out to Warwick. Thank you for that. I see my guest in the background. I'm going to bring him in. We are joined with the man himself, Daniel Lazare. How you doing, Dan? You doing okay today? I can't hear you for some reason. Oh, there you are.
Well, sorry.
There you are. Now I can hear you. No, you're fine. You're fine. How you doing? You doing okay today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Daniel, I'm doing okay. Like I told Warwick, dragging a bit of ass, but I'm okay. Daniel Lazare, he's an independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. Daniel, I always ask this when I haven't seen a guest in a while. Have you been working on any new books?
No, I have not. I've been doing a lot of writing, but no books. I would like to, but I haven't had the opportunity yet. So I'm awaiting the call.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So what is it? You have to have, like, is it an inspiration? Is it something that, like?
Oh no, I've got plenty of inspiration. I just need funding and time. I mean, a book takes a year or two, and that's a year, 1 or 2 years in which you can do nothing else, and that's really difficult. So you have to have a commitment from a publisher that they want to see, that they want to see what you come up with. Otherwise, it's a disaster. Otherwise, you can spend 2 years writing a book, and you wind up publishing it on your website. So that's not a good thing.
No, that's fair. And I mean, you've written several books, and I'll go through a few of these: The Frozen Republic, The Velvet Coup, America's Undeclared War. I have you writing at weekly. Well, this is not Weekly Worker anymore, though. You have a different.
No, I've split with those guys. I write for a website called permanentrevolution.com. I write sometimes for the Democratic Constitution blog. I publish in other places. I had a book review not long ago in the ERPI newsletter. ERPI is the Union for Radical Political Economics. It was a review of the new book by Ezra Klein and I think Fred Thompson, Abundance. So I publish pretty widely. Oh, and I also have a Substack going that I'm working very hard at and trying to make into a going proposition.
And DanielLazare.substack.com.
Yeah.
Okay. You've distracted me now because I'm curious on your thoughts on Ezra Klein's book, because that book that has been getting a lot of pushback.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a totally bad book. Some of the things that Klein and Thompson come up with are not bad. They have a very cute line about NIMBYism in Los Angeles, and they quote Los Angeles liberals as saying, what do we want? Low cost housing. When do we want it? Now. Where do we want it? Nowhere near us. So
that's right. Not in my backyard.
So it's a completely deadlocked society, and none of the solutions work. So people complain, but there's that complete absence of solutions. They also talk about how back in the I think it was the 1990s, Jerry Brown started talking about a high-speed rail line linking LA and San Francisco. And why not? That the Japanese, Jerry Brown is a young man who traveled to to Japan and saw the bullet train there and was really impressed, and quite rightly. So if Japan can do it, why can't the U.S.? Yeah, well, they spent $30 billion. That's with a B, not an M. $30 billion and didn't build a single mile of track. I mean, that is so scandalous. It's amazing. So this is an example of how utterly dysfunctional the society is. But anyway, where they went wrong. So that the book is not bad in that respect. But where it goes wrong is that they're very shallow when it comes to political analysis. They're very techno-optimistic. They believe that that technology will solve all problems, and therefore they don't have to pay much attention to politics, which is ridiculous, just completely ridiculous. I mean, global warming is not a technological problem; it's a political problem, an economic problem, and you can't solve it, without tackling those areas first and foremost. Now, it doesn't win you any friends, and it doesn't make your book a bestseller, because people buy books that kind of basically are feel-good books. So so that's why they didn't do it. But it's pathetic. It's not that's a complete dodge of the real issues. America is a country with whose political system is completely blocked at every turn. It can't do a thing. It's paralyzed. Democracy is crumbling, and that's what we're seeing in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination.
And you would think that him writing about spending $30 billion on high-speed rail and not getting it accomplished, that's a political issue. That's not a tech issue. The technology clearly exists in China, Japan, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they go back and forth. They waffle. But they, it's a political issue, but then again, they don't talk about the really important things. To me, it's just an elaborate dodge. And and of course, Ezra Klein is this guy who wrote this op-ed about Kirk,
yes,
which said that Kirk was doing politics right.
Insane. Insane. Like it's I gotta be honest, it has blown my mind the way that they have talked about Charlie Kirk and ignored everything that Charlie Kirk said and did over the course of his life. It's like it puts you in the mind of like a funeral where somebody goes up and says, "This was a great man. This person did so and so." When my grandfather died, my grandfather was an alcoholic. He was a drunk. He was an angry, vengeful drunk. You would have never known at the funeral. And that's how it feels about Charlie Kirk. It's like all of the things he said in his life gets pushed to the side, and it's like he's a great man. Yeah. And according to Ezra Klein, he did politics the right way.
He was he's a mass murderer. He's a child molester, but he's otherwise a really great guy.
Right.
That's been the New York Times line. The New York Times line is that we've got to that Charlie Kirk was somehow a healer who brought the country together, and it's appalling.
Because when somebody says, when I get in an airplane, I wonder if I have a black pilot, because he's terrified for his life. That totally brings people together. Or that black women, basically don't have two brain cells rubbed together. They can never make an argument. Totally bring people together.
Or that Jews are funding. What did he say? What did he say? Jews are funding the breakup of white communities, and they're doing this and they're doing. It's just it's just an appalling collection of stupid and bigoted statements that are tearing the country apart, not bringing it together.
That's amazing.
But but Ezra Klein is somehow is pretending it's the opposite. He's standing with the truth on his head.
The murder, by the way. I mean, there's it's funny. Well, I just had a conversation with Warwick, and Warwick was talking about, and even Peter Turchin's book. I don't know if you had the opportunity to read it. It's called End of Times.
I think I have actually.
Oh, it's such a good book. But the arguments dovetail, because Warwick is making the point of saying, look, your political system has become so ossified that wealth, almost like a whirlwind, is being ferreted to the top just based on the mechanics of the system itself. Turchin makes the argument, you have too many elites. You have this kind of elite pump that creates these elites, that creates propaganda and everything else to make the argument that they should get more. They should get more money. They should get more resources. Well, you have this kind of immiseration of the working class and the poor, and then ultimately that creates revolts and conflict. Does Kirk fit into that conflict to you, from your point of view?
Oh yeah, he's a central part of the mechanism. I mean, his job is to make workers angry at liberals, feminists, Democrats, etc. I'm not saying they shouldn't be angry at liberals, feminists, Democrats, etc. But he has them draw the diametrically, opposite conclusions of what they should be drawing. Right-wing conclusions rather than left-wing conclusions. The working class is being immiserated, but the working class is not fighting back. Instead, the so-called resistance, which is a totally bogus term, is dominated by the Democrats, whose goal is to turn the clock back, to 3 or 4 years to the glory days under Joe Biden. So we can return and have the same old, go back to the same old crap. That is, that is really the worst possible outcome. I mean,
yes,
the worst possible outcome to this whole Trump experience would be that if a Democrat is elected in 2028, and we go back, we just turn the clock back to the same decaying system we had prior to 2025. There will have been no progress. The whole experience will be for naught, and the country will again be stuck in a rut.
But the country is still stuck in a rut. Like, I guess,
yes.
I find myself agreeing more and more with your take and your argument on this, that the issue is the way the political system is arranged. And it is creaking at the seams without any ability to give outcomes that are to the benefit of the majority of the public, in which case you get chaos.
Well, democracy is on the ropes. It was on the ropes before, and it's now even more so. America is a minority dictatorship. The Electoral College, the Senate, the gerrymandered House, the Supreme Court, these all give power to minorities. The Republicans are a 53 vote majority in the Senate, but they represent only 45% of the population. The House over the last 20 years has given Republicans a significant advantage, electoral advantage. The Supreme Court, it has a 6-3 conservative majority. Of those 6 conservatives, 5 were either nominated by minority presidents, in other words, presidents who only got a minority of the popular vote, or were confirmed by senators representing a minority of the population. So it's minority rule. It's a minority dictatorship. And the majority, the Democratic majority, is being crushed. So it's not a democracy. It's an anti-democracy. And the problem is structural. It's not programmatic. It's not a question of policy. It's not a question of having the right people, voting for the right people. It's a question of structure, of pure structure. You've got an 18th century constitution dating from the age of slavery and silk knee breeches and powdered wigs, and it is impossible to change. Impossible. So the country is stuck with an antiquated system of government that's functioning more and more poorly.
What about the people who say, like me, who would say that, okay, I agree with you about the structure being problematic, but any revolution, whatever the revolution is, loses steam. Meaning, over time, people get more corrupt. Like the basis of starting a country. Let's say South Africa. Let's use South Africa as an example. You get rid of apartheid. You have the ANC come into play. They're very revolutionary. We're the vanguard of the revolution. We're going to change things for the better. We're going to make things better for the people. Fast forward 30 years later, you have a guy who's a billionaire as president.
Yeah, and actually, I think South Africa is the third most unequal country in the world.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
Like, that the revolution runs out of steam? Like, the people who were there in the beginning, who had very clear ideas, they were very, philosophical in the way they looked at government. Okay, 200-300 years later, they don't have that connection. They're just trying to make money.
Well, yes, I mean, the ANC, the ANC underwent a major ideological change over the years. By the time it took power, it was firmly committed to capitalism, private property, and the Western free market system. So it was, you say it's a revolution that ran out of steam. To me, it's a revolution that really never acquired sufficient steam.
I'm talking about the U.S. when I say that. I mean, you have all of these great ideas about it's a democracy if you can have it. We shouldn't go fighting foreign wars or monsters abroad. You have all of these ideas. And 200-300 years later, the people that spirit, that drive, that vision that you had evaporates. At that point, you just have people who are just trying to get rich. People who are trying to maneuver a system in the way that they can find what's best. I mean, this goes back to the Jefferson thing, right? Where democracy has to be watered by fires of revolution or something like that. Almost prescient in realizing.
I've written pretty extensively about the American Revolution, and it was a very conservative revolution. It preceded the French Revolution by 13 years?
Yeah,
14 years. And the French Revolution was the real thing. I always say the French Revolution was so revolutionary that it revolutionized revolution itself. In other words, revolution was previously seen as kind of revolving in place and a returning to a starting point. Right. But the French Revolution defined revolution completely different as a great leap forward into something entirely new. They didn't want to restore the old forms. They wanted to create completely different new forms. That spirit is completely absent in the American Revolution. There was no concept of that whatsoever. And you got to bear in mind, by the way, that for white people, America in the 1770s was the freest, most democratic, and richest place on earth. Yeah. American soldiers in the Revolutionary War were 2 inches taller than their British equivalents, wow, because they ate that much better. They lived 10 years longer. They were, it was when they brought the Hessians over to fight to fight for the British, the Hessians deserted. Why wouldn't you? I mean, why not be a farmer in Pennsylvania, where there are a lot of other German speakers? Why not be a farmer in Pennsylvania rather than fight for, George III? And that's what happened. But because they had it so good, it was very conservative. They just wanted to keep what they had. They didn't want to make anything new. They wanted to turn the clock back to pre-1763, which is when England started tightening up controls. So it was a conservative revolution, and we're a very conservative country. Very conservative. You know that. I know that. I mean, and that conservatism is completely played out because there are no answers in the past. I mean, the only way America can solve its problems is by going forward, not by returning to the past.
I do get that. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do get that. Okay. I guess what I'm pointing out, though, is in the beginning of any, let's say, revolution, conservative or otherwise, there are ideas that the people have when they make that revolution, that whatever that is, and not just in the U.S., pretty much anywhere else. And at some point, that thread is lost. Like whatever that idea was, freedom, democracy, liberty, all of these other buzzwords, that stuff gives way to how can I get mine? And I'm saying, and the reason why I say this is the U.S. government is not, and maybe you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, it's not radically different in structure, and yet despite slavery, despite all of these other things, the government was able to function. I mean, the filibuster is a really good example of that. They weren't using the filibuster in the way they use it now, where you need 60 votes to get everything passed. It was very sparingly. And then somewhere along the way, it was like, hey, how can we use this to our advantage as a political party? The idea of what is in the best interest of the U.S. didn't matter. Debates, same thing. Look at Donald Trump, when Trump was like, I don't need to do debates. I'm in a better position. Why would I take the risk of doing a debate with these other lemmings in the Republican Party if I don't need to do it? Again, America mattered less. I'm saying there used to be a willingness on some level, at the very least, at a much, the U.S. used to hold America up higher than what it does now, as opposed to now it just seems to be what is in the best interest of me, myself, or my political party. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
A bit of both. I think the thing is that the economic machinery is slowing down, and the political machinery is in a state of collapse. And the filibuster is a good example of what's going on. I mean, I don't know if your listeners know this, but the filibuster, as you say, used to be very sparingly invoked. Very, it's happened once or twice a decade. By the 90s and the aughts, it was happening every week and then every day. So now filibusters are routine. You can't pass a bill and you can't pass a bill without a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, which means you need at least 60 votes, which means that 40 votes can block any bill, or 41 votes to be exact. And 41 votes in the Senate can be gleaned from states representing just 17% of the population. So that's an example of the minority dictatorship. 54% of the country lives in just 10 states where they are outvoted 4-1 by the minority in the other 40. Better than 80% of racial minorities live in those top 10 states where they're outvoted even more egregiously. I mean, I love it when academics talk about, what is the phrase? I forgot what the phrase is. Built-in racial bias. Well, but this is structural bias. Not. It's explicit, absolutely explicit. It's up front. I mean, and everybody suffers as a consequence, not just Black or brown people, but everybody, believe it or not, suffers from the oligarchy that results from those incredible disparities. So it's just an undemocratic atrocity, and it's got to change.
I think it will change at some point when it collapses. Like, how do we fix this before it gets to the point of collapse? Because Turchin's argument is it will collapse. Governments within 200, 250, 300 years collapse. And they collapse for the exact same reason over and over and over again. And that the U.S. is an amazing case. That the only reason we saved it off during FDR was because of the New Deal. How do we fix this?
Well, there was an old economist named Herbert Stein. Actually, he's a Republican, but he's a pretty funny guy. And he's famous for something called Stein's rule, which is if something can't go on forever, it won't go on forever. So I mean, I think what we're talking about here is clearly revolution, and a revolution can be defined various ways, but a revolution, among other things, is a constitutional break, where the sovereign authority passes from one class to another. And in this case, you have to have a revolution that tosses aside the Constitution, not according to the Constitution's own precepts, but contrary to those precepts, and therefore under its own authority. The founding fathers did this. The Articles of Confederation, which, as you may know from your history books, was still the law of the land in 1787, when the Constitutional Convention was held in Philadelphia. And the Articles of Confederation are quite clear. You cannot have any change, any constitutional change, without the approval of all 13 states. Well, the Constitution says in Article 6 that it shall be considered ratified when approved by just 9 states. So in other words, the Constitution was illegal. It was a criminal conspiracy. And it succeeded because the conspiracy changed the law to retroactively legalize its own actions. It's as if a cop stops you for speeding. And you say, "Oh, don't bother writing out a ticket because I've just changed the speed limits."
right.
So it sounds ridiculous, but that is essentially what the founding fathers did. By the way, this is well known. It's not just me saying this.
Yeah.
This paradox has been thoroughly explored. So, but that was a revolutionary act, and essentially a reconstitution of America will require an equally revolutionary act in which a new constitution is created contrary to the rules set forth by the current constitution, and then legitimized according to new rules that it creates. So it's a criminal conspiracy that to change the law in order to legalize itself, and that's essentially what a revolution. It's one definition of what a revolutionary means.
There's another one.
Well, another way, no. So it's a new class overthrows an old class. The working class overthrows the capitalist class, and there's no doubt that if the Constitution is overthrown, it won't be overthrown by a bunch of intellectuals sitting around in a room, discussing a constitutional theory. It'll be overthrown by the working class, which will demand a workers' democracy in its own interest that will, will overthrow this oligarchy, will equalize incomes, will nationalize industry, will tackle global warming head on in a powerful way, et cetera, et cetera.
That's called the war.
Well, it's a revolution.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just pointing out that is a war. Like the capital class is not they are going to pay every mercenary, every military person that they can fund. They're going to be giving these people $1 million just to stand in line, to protect their wealth. Yeah. I mean, what Warwick just pointed out, he said bulletproof glass is one of the largest increasing markets that we have at our disposal. And he was making a point of saying the poor don't buy bulletproof glass. That means they know something is coming. The world is getting more hostile. Do you see that taking place? I mean, America seems more anesthetized than any other nation that I've ever been to.
Yeah. But eventually the anesthesia wears off. I mean, in 1786, Louis XVI embarked on a cross-country tour that lasted several days. And at every stop he made, he was greeted by cheering crowds. And anybody who witnessed that procession would agree that the bond between the French people and their king was absolutely unbreakable. 1786, 7 years later, he would be marched to the guillotine, and not one person would raise a finger to save him. They all recognized that it was inevitable; he would have to go. So yeah. So the French were anesthetized, but then the anesthesia wore off. I think America is a profoundly unstable country. I think the working class is in play. The working class broke with the Democrats in 2024, which I think is all to the good. As I always say, I'm sorry that Trump won, but I'm happy the Democrats lost. But the
Agreed.
But they will. But the working class will break with Trump too, because Trump is now hammering them. I mean, it's like wages are being cut. The economy is in a tailspin. Economic polarization is accelerating. The White House, the Trump family is doing mega deals involving crypto and computer chips, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the working class is being left in the dust, and immigrant workers are being deported to obscure countries in Africa, and Trump is bombing ships, containing 11 migrant workers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's building concentration. You know the litany as well as I do, and this cannot last. I mean, workers will fight back. They've got to, and I have no doubt they will. History shows they will. History shows that that the big mystery about the French Revolution is not why it happened in 1789, but why it didn't happen in 1689 or 1589. Why it took so damn long.
Yeah.
But the fact that it took so long made it all the more radical when it finally took place. And so the big mystery now in America is, why is it taking so long? I mean, why are workers just standing by and watching while their conditions deteriorate so alarmingly? And the answer is, we don't know why. We know this won't last forever.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why. I don't really have an answer for that question. I mean, you could say propaganda. You could say they believe they can't see a way out. Oftentimes, you need somebody to kind of make that. Like, lefties have this idea that people will rise up in groups, missing the fact, like at Occupy Wall Street, you need a leader for those groups. Typically, you do. At least I think you do. I think you need to organize it. But I don't have an answer for that question either.
You need leadership. You need socialist parties. You need a movement. But all of us on the left have been tossing and turning for years now, trying to figure out how to get that process started, and we haven't gained traction yet. It's obviously very frustrating. We keep talking and arguing and writing, etc. But sometimes it seems as if you're shouting, into the wind. But as I say, I'm absolutely confident that this will not last forever. That things will change, and that people will not go silently into that good night. They will fight back.
Can I ask you about TikTok? I know I brought you on to talk about the AFD, but the TikTok thing popped up today in the media space. So apparently, the Trump administration has gotten a deal to sell TikTok to pro-Zionist group. And the reason I'm saying pro-Zionist, I'm not saying that out the blue. So early on, they were making the argument that part of the reason that the U.S. has turned so fervently against the Israeli direction, and just to back that up, I don't want you to take my word for it. These are, where's it? I have all of these things open. These are polling documents that recently came out right here. 32% of the U.S. back Israel's military action in Gaza. This is a new low. You have another one. Support for Israel continues to deteriorate, especially among Democrats and young people. By the way, this is also many conservatives. If you look at Tucker Carlson, apparently even Charlie Kirk was twisting on this issue. Megyn Kelly, you have some people who have started to question this idea of the genocide. Less than half of the U.S. is now sympathetic towards Israelis. Here's another one. Americans used to be steadfast in their support for Israel. Those days are gone. So part of their rationale was, well, TikTok is the issue. TikTok is showing all of these videos that Israelis themselves are making of killing Palestinians. This looks bad. We don't want TikTok showing it. This is the ADL CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt, when he was talking to the Knesset, made the point of saying, we need to capture TikTok. Well, it seems that they've done just that. They've captured TikTok. And the new owners of TikTok will be Oracle's Larry Ellison, in addition to other right here. Among the investors, which would be expected to own roughly 80% stake in TikTok, with Chinese shareholders owning the rest, are Oracle, Adrianson Horowitz, Silver Lake, the sources said the new consortium would also operate a majority of the U.S. board, including a member appointed by the Trump administration. To make this even worse, you get this article. What is his name? Where is it? Right here. So this is the other one. Ellison, who is a close to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and donated heavily to Israeli military through nonprofit Friends of Israel's Defense Force. In 2017, he gave the organization's biggest ever donation, $16.6 million. Oracle, of course, did not respond. So they needed to capture TikTok. They got it. There's like, congratulations, you were able to get what you wanted. And this was also helped by Joe Biden. So this is not purely a Trump thing. Joe Biden signed the law that said China couldn't own more than 20% of TikTok. I mean, what do you think of this? I mean, for all intents and purposes, many of these people have connections to the deep state because they have military contracts and everything else. And so this sounds like TikTok in the US is just going to become a propaganda outlet for whatever model, or in this specific case, Israel, because in their minds, they need to capture the media. Give me your thoughts on this. This seems, I want to use the term depraved, but
I've got a lot of thoughts. I mean, for one thing, there's no doubt that Silicon Valley is going far to the right. I mean, some of what's coming out of the tech elite is really quite extraordinary. I mean, guys like Curtis Yarvin, who was kind of Peter Thiel's in-house philosopher, and Musk himself, by the way,
yes,
are preaching. And I'm very careful with the word fascism, but they are preaching a quasi-fascist doctrine, and that is influential throughout the tech elite, and part of that ideology is support for Netanyahu. Because Israel, by the way, is a tech power and therefore is closely integrated into Silicon Valley. But right. More importantly, the Zionism is a major part of this far right worldview, which is now hegemonic in the tech elite. So it's not very surprising they want to capture TikTok and that they want to tame TikTok and try to tamp down on this kind of popular revulsion against what Israel is doing. So it's not is the deep state is the conspiracy. Yeah, it's the deep state. Yeah, it's a kind of conspiracy. But it simply is a sign of how this one very important sector of the bourgeoisie, and by the way, the most high performing, the most dynamic sector of the ruling class, is just galloping to the radical right, and in so doing is completely solidarizing with Trump and all that he's up to, and solidarizing with Netanyahu as well. So that's how I see it.
This is wild though, because if you go back, let's say to Obama era, you would have thought that tech was firmly in the grasp of Democrats.
Yeah.
Why do you think that flipped so fervently?
That's really a fascinating question. I mean, tech is still socially liberal. I mein, there are a lot of gay people there. They a lot of pot. Steve Jobs used to drop acid and other stuff like that. So they are liberal in that respect. But Biden made certain mild efforts to restrain tech and AI, which provoked a furious response among the tech elite. People like Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin gained more and more influence, and the elite has gone rushing in a quasi-fascist direction, and that is simply undeniable. I've read Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin is his main inspirer is an English philosopher named Nick Land, and Land has a few books out, one of which is called Dark Enlightenment, kind of a pun, but it's quite fascinating. Land is a very powerful writer, and his most famous line is, not democracy does not lead to doom, democracy is doom. In other words, democracy simply means unleashing the mob so it can loot society and turn productive Western countries into Somalias. That is obviously that is his thesis in a nutshell, and that is capturing the imagination of the much of the tech elite.
But that thesis is nonsense on print, and we can look around and see that thesis is nonsense. When you get like 93% of the stock market owned by the top 10%, that's obviously not the case. Like, meaning it's the opposite of that. We've been able to capture. Yeah, it's outlandish. And Peter Thiel looks like he watches puppies get killed for entertainment. He is terrifying. I saw him in an interview, and they asked him, does he think humanity should survive? And he didn't know how to answer the question. He was,
there's this transhumanist movement, which says that humanity need not survive. What's important is intelligence. And if machine intelligence is outstripping human intelligence, which is what AI proponents maintain, then what's important is that machines triumph, machines and their a few small elite of human makers triumph over the rest of humanity. So I mean, so it's Silicon Valley fascism at its purest. I mean, it's a dictatorship by AI wielding tech entrepreneurs. I think it's nonsense. I think that's not what AI is, but that is the thinking that seems to be taking hold.
Yeah, right now this is like large language models. This is not exactly, general intelligence in the way that I think they're thinking about it.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Also, there's something terrifying about that. Like, it's one thing when jobs were worked by workers, meaning you had somebody driving the trucks, you had somebody unloading the docks, you had somebody doing et cetera. And then you get to this thing where these billionaires, for all intents and purposes, want machines to do all of these jobs, which I get. It's a capitalistic system, right? You can maximize your profit by firing a worker and putting in a machine to do that particular job. I don't know who's going to buy their product, but whatever, this is their thinking. Workers lose control, in a sense, meaning there is no work stoppage when things go wrong. There is no ability to protest in the sense of we're calling a general strike or stuff like that. Meaning, it seems like in their fevered dreams, their fetish is to get to a point where the capability of workers to have any control in the context of a system, meaning this system, disintegrates, or at the very least diminishes to such a degree where, all things being equal, machines, AI, all of these other things can effectively take over the responsibilities of work, whereas workers themselves no longer have that input, that power to do anything about it. Do you think is that too cynical of the thinking? I mean, because that sounds exactly like what these guys are thinking about with dark enlightenment and all this other nonsense.
Oh no, I think it's entirely accurate. I think they're self-defeating, however. I mean, look at the Industrial Revolution started in what, the 1760s, 1770s, with the first steam engines, and since then, capability increased hundreds, thousands of times. But rather than putting workers out of work, the working class now numbers in the billions. So all that machinery, all that technological investment, created a hugely powerful working class, and essentially added to the power of the working class. So material investment does not reduce the power of workers. It really winds up increasing the power of workers. That is the essence of the Marxist dialectic. I mean, if you read the Communist Manifesto, it's kind of funny because it opens up with this tribute to capitalism. Capitalism has accomplished more than the 7 wonders of the world. It is this powerful transformative force. But it creates the working class. It sows the seeds of its own destruction by creating a working class, which in its growing power eventually reaches a point where it is able to overthrow the capitalist class and to use all this industry for the benefit not of a tiny elite, but of humanity at large.
But that's theory. And if you think about it, well, I mean, just to make the argument, I mean, one of the back during the Nixon era, do you remember when Nixon was doing the reverse income tax, where he kind of put it out there?
Yeah.
The reason that he put that out there, and you correct me if I'm wrong, was because economists at the time was looking at this convergence of workers effectively being unnecessary. More people were going to the workforce, including women. Well, just let me make the argument.
Yeah.
More people were going into the workforce, in a sense, wanting more workers' rights. Technology was moving to a point where you needed less people to do various jobs. And if you think about it, most jobs are BS jobs. I mean, like, most jobs are creating, it's almost like digging a hole and having somebody else fill the hole. If you get rid of those, which you probably could, especially through automation and those type of things. If I create a system that would allow somebody to walk into 7-Eleven, pick up their product, the card is automatically scanned and they can walk out. I don't need the cashier. I may need one security guard. I don't need the cashier. If you look at supermarkets today, where you used to have 10, 12, 15 people running lines at grocery stores. Okay, well, you might have 3 today, and you have automatic checkout. It's automated. Same thing with truckers. You're going to get to a point where hundreds of thousands of people who are driving trucks, taxis, Ubers, when that stuff becomes automated, which it will, that car will drive to the gas station automatically when he needs gas, and it will go and automatically pick up the person. You may need somebody periodically to clean it, but you won't need somebody to drive it. Like, this is removing hundreds of thousands of jobs out of the workforce. And this is just basic technology that we can see now. You may need doctors and nurses. You may need artists, but those people are going to lose their jobs.
And believe me, even doctors and nurses are not invulnerable to these forces. Yeah. We have AI reads X-rays.
Yeah.
So used to have a highly trained technician to read an X-ray. Now it's done by machine.
You make my point.
Well, yeah. That's a shovel is a great invention. If before all you had was a stick, then an iron shovel is a small miracle. And so an iron shovel is to a stick what AI was to an ordinary adding machine. There's no doubt about it. But I said before, the working class has gone from a few thousand people in the north of England, the industrial proletariat, to billions of people across the world. And so all this investment has made workers stronger rather than weaker. The working class doesn't know its own power yet, but it will discover that. And the goal is to take these marvelous devices and to harness them for the benefit of society. Look, I mean, capitalism is killing the world. I mean, global warming is a kind of a collective extinction. So I didn't vote for that. You didn't vote for that. Neither did billions of people in the third world. And if those billions of people ever get the vote, and the glorious day comes when we have a worldwide election to determine climate policy, there's no doubt as to what the outcome will be. People will vote for rational policies to prevent global warming from killing them and their families and their societies and everyone else. So that is the goal. and democracy is stalled at this moment in a small number of wealthy nation states, but it's got to be extended and carried to a whole new level for humanity to find a way out of this dead end.
But you would agree with me, though, that that's not really a repudiation. I understand that it's employed. We go through revolutions. You may have, let's say, feudalism, capitalism, industrial revolution. Well, many of these people weren't employed up until the point where we reached this kind of industrial revolution where all of these people were needed. I'm saying that we are also reaching this new tipping point where these people are not going to be needed. And society has no way to compensate for it. Hell, maybe that may bring on a different revolution in that case where people start losing their jobs because those people are no longer necessary in the workforce. I guess I'm making an argument that many of the jobs that we have are BS jobs. They're paper pushers, things that don't necessarily need to exist. What was the book? Bullshit Jobs, I think was the name of the book, that was going into all of these fields and professions that didn't need to exist. And that on some level, this may just be policy in order to soak up a workforce that is fundamentally unnecessary. Even the military can only soak up so many people in regards to society. We may be reaching a tipping point where quantitatively we can see a reduction in the number of people who are needed in jobs and who are needed in work. I'm saying that tipping point is coming. That's not, I used to be a software engineer. And in my job, just working at one company, I was able to eliminate like 3 or 4 jobs. Now they moved those people to somewhere else, but they didn't need to move those people somewhere else. They could have just fired those people. They were just better people where they didn't want to fire people who were on their workforce. But I was writing software that was eliminating something that 3 or 4 people used to do in the mornings and in the evenings. And it was giving them information in a way that was better, faster, and more accurate than what those human beings themselves were doing. I am just a BS programmer or a software engineer. Can you imagine what that looks like on a macro scale across companies, across the entirety of society in the United States? That is traumatic. I hope you get my point. Like, I agree with you that capitalism required those workers at one point. But I guess I'm making the argument that in the same rationality of a capitalist, of how do I maximize my profit? Well, I can either put a person who wants $15 an hour to make a hamburger, or I can make a burger machine that will automatically do it. I can have a cashier to take the order, or I can have a machine that would allow a person to put in their order, and they just walk up and they just go, and one person gives it to them. These are quantitative changes that are taking place across our society, even abroad. You can see it.
Yeah, I think yes, of course, what you're saying is correct. I mean, there's the society, humanity. This seems to be poised on the verge of some kind of die-off. I mean, reproduction rates are plunging. I mean, South Korea, in some ways, an amazingly productive society. The birth rate is down to, I think, 1.3 per woman, which is about 40% below stable population. And in Seoul, I think it's down to 0.7 per woman, which is like 2/3 below reproduction. So South Korea is facing in a generation a dramatic loss of population. Japan's in the same boat, but you see this worldwide. In fact, what we see is that, is that 30, 40, 50 years ago, the talk was all about overpopulation. Now what we see is the exact opposite, where the global population has actually probably in the last year or two ceased growing and is now heading downward. That's just basic population. Now, in 1900, the global population, I think, was something like 1.2 billion. Today, it's 8 billion.
Yeah.
And despite fantastic inequalities and the atrocious way that billions of people in the third world are treated, the fact is that 8 billion people today are living far, far better, unimaginably better than 1.2 million were living in 1900. I mean, ordinary diseases can be cured, with a snap of the fingers. 4 out of 5 children don't die before reaching the age of 21. people in advanced economies, living into your 80s or even your 90s is now normal. Before you were lucky to make it into your 70s. So there has been a dramatic increase in population and a dramatic improvement in living standards. But there are signs that incredible curve, that 120-year curve, is now turning downwards. And I think that it shows that capitalism simply is turning into this hugely destructive force, where technological investment is now being used for the enrichment of an ever smaller minority at the expense of the vast majority. And the vast majority is being sent into a tailspin as a consequence.
Agreed. No, I agree with you on that. I mean, when the goal is to maximize profit as opposed to human life,
you get a lot of profit, and you get a diminution in human life.
Yeah. Daniel, you are fantastic, man. I am so glad you was able to join. Oh, AFD. We're supposed to talk about AFD. So Germany, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's been a while since I spoke to you, so catching up, I kind of enjoy it. German and Chancellor Merz was seen yesterday crying about quote unquote anti-Semitism that was supposedly taking hold in Germany. Now, mind you, their definition for anti-Semitism is just, I don't want you to kill Palestinians, but we'll put that to the side for a moment. So they had an election in his area. I'm trying to find the exact name of the area.
It's the North Rhine-Westphalia. It's a state, a Land, as they call it in Germany, in northwestern Germany. It accounts for about 21 or 22% of the German population. It's the biggest state or Land in Germany. And these were local elections, and the AFD, the far right pro-Trump party, tripled its vote from 5 years ago.
Now, Merz was able to get 33%, or his party was able to get 33%. But as you point out, they've tripled their vote. These guys are questioning very loudly, why are we still in this war? Why can't we use Russian oil? Our industries are collapsing and closing. And apparently the public is saying, hey, these guys have a point.
By the way, the Die Linke party, which is the far left party, also increased its vote by about 20%. That's still, I think, went from 5.3 to 6 point something. I forget the exact number. The story is in some ways the same. The U.S. is more advanced in this regard, but all through Europe, the far right is surging. Portugal, Spain, Italy, they're in power. Germany, France. I mean, France. The Macron is in a state of crisis. They have got a new prime minister, and but the sense is that it's just a waiting game that Marine Le Pen's party will take power in 2027. Scandinavia, the same thing is happening. Poland, the same thing is happening. The trend is striking throughout Europe. And by the way, they're all saying the same thing about Charlie Kirk. That Charlie Kirk was killed by an out of control left. It's all the left's fault. There must be a crackdown on the left, et cetera, et cetera. That's the Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, said that recently. So it's they're singing the same tune, and the trends are precisely the same as in the U.S. And here, as you know, I mean, Trump is really preparing. He's quite clearly preparing some kind of massive crackdown.
Yes. No, agreed. It's funny how they fashioned him into a weapon. He's not even a person anymore. He's just a weapon. It's what do you think? I mean, because from my point of view, if they're using that and they're boosting that rhetoric, they're boosting that rhetoric for a reason. I mean, for one, I don't know how effective that's going to be in Germany. I get the sense that the AFD, I was looking for the stats. Germany has had mass layoffs over the course of the last, for one, they're in recession. Two, they've had mass layoffs, and this has been taking place month after month after month, where the company either has been closing up or they've been firing people from their industries. Now, Germany is supposedly the beating heart of Europe in regards to industry. That I strongly suspect that is far more pressing than any of this Charlie Kirk stuff.
Well, I think it's all part of the same package. The North Rhine, Westphalia, is in the heart of what they call the blue banana. The blue banana is a industrial belt stretching from London and Liverpool on down through into northern Italy, Milan. This is the heart of West European industry, finance, education, technological development. It's very, very powerful. And Westphalia, Northern Rhine, Westphalia is smack dab in the middle of it. Yeah. And now it's catching the AFD disease.
German companies announced 125,000 industrial job cuts in just 6 weeks. If that was in the U.S., there would be 520,000 jobs cut in 6 weeks.
Yeah,
that's astonishing.
Well, the U.S. is on the verge of recession. The economy is slowing down. There's a huge bubble on Wall Street, much of it fueled by AI, but I'm very skeptical. I wrote an article back in, I think, February about the Trump boom. That there was he was igniting a politico-economic boom involving crypto, AI, and Trump's political fortunes as well. Yeah, and I'm just I think that maybe I should write a sequel talking about the coming Trump bust. That I think that AI is a huge bubble. I think that Wall Street is grossly overvalued, and I think that Trump himself is he's not going to fall, but it's going to take a very grim turn. So I think that the outlook is very, very bleak.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers on inflation in the United States.
Yeah,
and they're through the roof. I mean, and if you're looking at agri recession, dead ahead. Donald Trump literally fired the person who was doing the numbers because he didn't like what the numbers said. Numbers were the numbers. But if you're looking at things that people have to actually buy, so right here, coffee is up 26%, beef is up 14%, oranges are up 17%, bananas are up 6%, chicken is up 6%, chocolate chip cookies, I don't know who put that there, but fair enough, 5%, potato chips 4%, milk 4%, the average worker's pay is only up 2%.
Yeah.
So basically, we are standing still. We're losing money.
And also housing. Don't forget housing.
And housing.
That is really the explosive thing. I mean, people are being killed by rampant speculation in real estate values, which is just driving housing costs far beyond the reach of the typical worker. So this is creating political turmoil, throughout the world, Mexico City, Ireland, and it's also fueling, by the way, the anti-immigrant fervor, because these people are being told that houses are expensive because immigrants are taking them.
Yeah,
it's complete BS, but nonetheless, the line resonates because.
Yeah, Daniel, I have deeply appreciated this conversation. I swear to God, I always enjoy these conversations with you. I know we were supposed to talk about the AFD. We did talk about it, to be fair. But kind of one thing led to another in regards to the beginning. So thank you for going along that journey with me.
Great.
Always appreciate you, man. I really do. And just so the audience will know, Daniel Lazare is, come on, just had to think up. Daniel Lazare is an independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic, The Velvet Coup, America's Undeclared War. You can find Daniel on thepermanentrevolution.com, Daniel Substack, Daniel Lazare Substack.com. You can find him on both of those where he writes articles.
Permanentrevolution.org.
Oh, .org. Okay, I'll change that now.
Okay.
Permanentrevolution.org.
I wanted permanent-revolution.org.
Okay. Daniel, you are fantastic, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. And by the way, just to make sure, Daniel-Lazare.substack.com.
I think it's Daniel Lazare, no. If you just do a Google search for Daniel Lazare Substack, you'll find it very fast.
Okay, I'll put it in the thing when I look it up. Thank you for this. You be safe, man.
Same to you. Same to you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. All right. Always enjoyed those conversations with Daniel. I hadn't had the opportunity to talk to him in a while. But as you can see, Daniel can talk about pretty much anything. He has been very strident in his criticism of the way that the U.S. system is kind of organized and the negative outcomes of that particular system. So that's a taste of it here. You can check out his books to get, I guess, more in-depth details of his argument on those issues. So I was curious if he had written another book just because, he's a writer's right. Our president and your president, Donald Trump, is in the UK right now. And greeting Donald Trump at his hotel is this.
Really call it a security breach on that tower. If you see that tower behind me there, Tom, currently white, just a few moments ago, protesters, anti-Trump protesters from the hotel opposite, we think, managed to project some images on there. And what were they of? As you can probably see from some of these pictures, Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew, and Jeffrey Epstein. That could not be a little more tricky and difficult just moments after Donald Trump arrived here. So, yeah, you couldn't really call it a security breach necessarily. But in terms of the diplomacy and laying on the charm, I'd say that was a bit of a massive failure. Let's just talk about tomorrow then, when they hope.
Oh, that is hilarious. That is hilarious. Oh, that is hilarious. Even in the UK, Trump cannot escape Epstein. Even though in the United States, for all intents and purposes, Epstein seems to have been, forgotten, shoveled under the covers in regards to the whole thing with Charlie Kirk being killed. And maybe that's some of the reason that they're leaning into it. Charlie Kirk's funeral, I was about to say wedding. I always mix those up, funerals and weddings. Charlie Kirk's funeral, Donald Trump is going to be one of the main speakers in it. J.D. Vance is going to be the main speaker. He is going to have effectively a political funeral with one head of state after the next speaking at his funeral. If I'm not mistaken, Tulsi Gabbard is going to be there. They're leaning into this. And you have to ask, why is Donald Trump and his administration leaning into this? Most people that are murdered in these kind of assassinations are done so by right-wing violence, not left-wingers. It is the left wing, the right wing that typically does the murders. So, but that has been put to the side. That has been completely ignored. Charlie Kirk's life and the things that he said over the course of his life has been completely ignored. And they have now categorized the murder of a racist degenerate as a civil rights icon, even complete with pictures of him in heaven shaking hands with Malcolm X. I feel like that picture is almost worse than the murder of Charlie Kirk. That's how bad that picture is. Meaning, you're comparing somebody who died literally for trying to, free African Americans from an apartheid state. The Charlie effing Kirk. That's what you're doing. And you don't understand why Black people feel some kind of way. A, about the life that Charlie Kirk led, and B, about this nonsense that you're making of him now that he has been murdered. No, nobody should have killed Charlie Kirk. As a flat fact, he shouldn't have been murdered. But don't make him something that he wasn't. This was a pet peeve I've always had, not just for Charlie Kirk. It's a pet peeve I would have, even at my own funeral. You have a list of videos that I've done. Don't make me out to be an angel. Whatever you do with the body, I don't all that much care. I'm trying to point out that you are trying to deify somebody. And the very fact that of the person you're trying to deify on some level gives context to the people who are doing it. Meaning, if you're trying to deify a racist, then I and many others are going to think you're also racist. Full stop. Donald Trump, Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Erica Kirk, Hegseth, Stephen Miller, Tucker Carlson, all these people are going to be at his funeral. All of these people are going to be at his funeral. So they are going to be apparently giving speeches and everything else. That's the speaker lineup. Trump, Vance, Tulsi, RFK, Erica Kirk, Hegseth, Stephen Miller, Tucker Carlson, and apparently more. The body is not even cold, and they have used him purely as a political cudgel. That's amazing. I find that to be amazing. We have time. Ted Rall is coming on. He's going to be on shortly. I want to play a clip by Max Blumenthal. Max Blumenthal was on Alex Jones. And some of this is understood to be probably true. I mean, Israel has bugged Secret Service vehicles before. That's not all that shocking. It's the other part that he says that is super interesting. This is Max Blumenthal talking about people who are in the Trump administration, saying that Donald Trump apparently is fearful for his life. I have a comment on this after this, but he's saying that people who are close to the president has been telling them this.
But you give us every detail you were told.
Well, this is according to a source with very good access inside the White House. I could say even the Oval Office, that on 2 separate occasions this year, Israel was caught placing surveillance or electronic devices on Secret Service emergency response vehicles. I'm only as good as my sources, because if I call up the Secret Service, I'm going to get some like desk guy who's going to tell me, no comment, we don't talk about that. But there's a precedent there. As I said, Israel did the same exact thing in 2019, and it was reported widely across mainstream media. The NSA has fingered Israel as the top surveillance threat to the United States. They surveil the U.S. more than any
but
other
Max, this
country.
is so huge. Your sources are saying in Secret Service vehicles.
And by the way,
I mean, this is basically an act of war, and you were giving other examples from your sources. Please elaborate as much. Give us every detail you were told.
Well, I elaborated as much as I could. I mean, what I've been told for months and months, talking to administration insiders, is that Trump is frightened of the Israeli influence, especially after his.
By the way, and I'll restart that. I've had John Kiriakou on the show, and John Kiriakou has made the point that the U.S. is not allowed to spy on Israel. That policy, going back for decades, prevents the United States from spying on the state of Israel, even though they can spy, apparently, on us, do so, and often get caught doing so. That is an amazing thing.
I call up the Secret Service.
When this was raised on the Tucker Carlson interview, when he was having a conversation with Ted Cruz, do you remember that Ted Cruz was like, well, what's the big deal with that? And Tucker Carlson like, what do you mean, what's the big deal? What do you mean, what's the big deal? Like, why do I have to argue this point to you that a foreign government, a colony of squatters that we effectively use as our cudgel in the Middle East, shouldn't be able to spy on us? And the idea that we can't spy on them is outrageous. It's outrageous. You have to ask, why? Let's keep going.
I'm going to get some like desk guy who's going to tell me, no comment, we don't talk about.
What the hell? Let's try this again. StreamYard is effing up today. Let's try this one more time. StreamYard, fix your code, dude. Fix your code. Fix your code.
2019, and it was reported widely across mainstream media. The NSA has fingered Israel as the top surveillance threat to the United States. They surveil the U.S. more than any
but
other
Max, this
country.
is so huge. Your sources are saying in Secret Service vehicles. I mean, this is basically an act of war, and you were giving other examples from your sources. Please elaborate as much. Give us every detail you were told.
Well, I elaborated as much as I could. I mean, what I've been told for months and months, talking to administration insiders, is that Trump is frightened of the Israeli influence, especially after his experiencing 2 assassination attempts. That's what we're unmasking, is the biggest foreign influence infiltration operation in American history that is basically taking control of an administration that says it's America first and is taking us to a very dangerous place.
Now, he is making the argument. That for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump is terrified of the Israelis, and that he got this information out of somebody who is in the White House and who's in the administration. On top of this, he's also alleging that they bugged, I guess, Secret Service emergency vehicles. The first part, I don't doubt. That doesn't shock me in the least. Obviously, if you're Israel, if you're any government, you would want some kind of intel on the governments that you're dealing with and working with. It's the reason why the U.S. bugged German phones or bugged, have listening into the various European states and so forth. This is kind of normal hand, especially for, let's say, CIA government interplay. The other part is more interesting. This argument that Donald Trump is terrified of the Israelis. Now, it sounds like what Max is trying to argue is a part of the reason and rationale that Donald Trump has been so obsequious to the Israelis, doing and effectively bending over backwards for anything that they say and anything that they want, has more to do with some level of fear that there have been 2 assassination attempts on my life, and I'm terrified of the Israelis. I don't know who told Max that. And, you know, I am very skeptical of anonymous sources when they're in Politico, the New York Times, or anywhere else, where somebody says, hey, Joe Biden is working tirelessly to get the Israelis to stop murdering, raping, and killing babies, women, children, etc. He's working tirelessly. That's what an anonymous source told us. Well, that wasn't true. Obviously, that wasn't true. Or when Donald Trump is very angry at Netanyahu. A source close to the White House told us he's very angry. Donald Trump is very angry that Netanyahu attacked Doha. Okay, well, this is nonsense, considering that Donald Trump knew that the strike was going to take place and ensured that air defense and everything else wasn't going to be turned on to ensure that the strike could take place. But he's very angry, according to the papers, when they're talking about it. I think like Axios put that story up. I don't care about your anonymous sources. When your anonymous sources is not lining up with reality itself. Is Max talking to somebody in the White House? Maybe. I'm not going to say he's out there lying, so fair enough. Did his source tell him that? Maybe. Again, not going to say that Max is lying. Gray Zone does really good work. But let's be honest. He is as susceptible to the anonymous source said X, every bit as much as Politico, every bit as much as every other organization that gets and uses anonymous sources, these ubiquitous anonymous sources. My point is this. Israel is a colony that the U.S. supports for its role and capability in the Middle East. It is not the other way around. You can make an argument to me that the wants dovetail, yes, but you can't tell me that the U.S., who funds it, gives it all the money, all the weapons, all the political support. I mean, for God's sake, the U.S. went to the ICJ in order to argue that Israel has the right to starve 2 million human beings. That's what we did. We are backing and funding a genocide. We are watching them murder, starve, rape human beings. We're watching it every day on social media. We can see it with our own eyes. We can see it take place. We can see the glee in Israelis' hearts as they shoot at starving Palestinians who are barely standing up, these ghostly figures, because they've wasted away to such a degree. We can see the glee in their hearts as they murder women and children, and of course, dangerous babies. This is something that this government has done in mass. I don't care about the rando Israeli that says, oh, I have psychological problems for murdering babies. Maybe you should have psychological problems. And there's an easy fix to that, considering you have a weapon. I'm pointing out something very different. I'm saying that Donald Trump is in lockstep with Netanyahu on all of this stuff. This ethnic cleansing, this genocide. Donald Trump is complete lockstep. It's not Netanyahu is leading Trump. It's not that. I don't believe that. My firm belief is that Israel is a colony, an actor that the United States controls, not the other way around. I don't believe the tail is wagging the dog. If the U.S. really stopped the money, stopped the support, stopped the political support, stopped supporting the UN, then Israel collapses. The day that the U.S. government collapses, within a week, the Israeli government and probably the Gulf states will also collapse right along with it. It is not a powerful nation. It is a nation of 8 million people, give or take, depending upon the number of people that left, that is completely reliant and dependent upon the United States for the very air that it breathes. The fart that comes out of Donald Trump's ass is the air that Israel breathes to exist. I hope you get my point. So this idea that Donald Trump is terrified, Donald Trump is scared to death. Donald Trump is enacting U.S. policy using Israel as his cudgel, as his tip of the spear in the Middle East to enact that policy, period. I don't think he's scared of anything. To say that he is scared makes it come across kind of like Joe Biden of, I'm doing everything possible. I'm trying to get them to stop. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It is whispers from behind a cloak veil, behind a curtain, about what Donald Trump really thinks. Donald Trump really would do something different if Donald Trump wasn't terror. I don't buy that at all. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I appreciate Max. Like Max. Gray Zone does great work. But you are on the Alex Jones show saying that. And Alex Jones, let's say, has a certain character about him. Gay frogs and all of this other stuff. Reptilians, lizard people, and the works and the likes. To give Max the benefit of the doubt, maybe somebody did tell him that. Maybe somebody did tell him that. Am I going to believe it just because some rando told Max that? No, especially if I can't interrogate the source. They told him. This is the same criteria. This is the same standard I have for any rando publication, whether it's Axios, New York Times, RT, Sputnik, Iranian media, Indian media, or any other media that is effectively living off of some kind of anonymous source in order to get something out. Will there be things that line up to reality? Yes. And on those things, I may give more credibility to. But on this, and perhaps my ideology is leading me astray, but from my ideological point of view, the United States controls Israel, not the other way around. And the policy that the United States or Israel is enacting is in lockstep with what the United States wants. Trump is not sitting in his room terrified that the Israelis are going to get him if he doesn't fall in line with what Netanyahu wants. This makes it look as if he's an actor that is forced into a particular position. I don't believe he's Charlie Kirk getting bodied in Hamptons and forced to take on a position that he may not necessarily entirely agree with. Trump is doing what other U.S. presidents did, just like Joe Biden did, just like Obama did, just like the presidents before him did, enacting policy for the U.S. government. Diversification of responsibility. We're going to let Israel deal with the issues of the Middle East. We're going to make them a hegemon in the Middle East and be the other Muslim countries subordinate to Israel. If the Europeans can get their act together, we want the Europeans to be the one to absorb the missiles that Russia fire at Europe when Europe oversteps its line, which is trying to do with the whole Poland issue. And we will want to pivot to China, but we want our vassal idiots in Japan and Philippines to absorb the Chinese missiles that will invariably come and blow them to hell. We would also get some of those missiles because China has a massive industrial capacity and can fire missiles at various sources. I hope you get my point. This is not Trump terrified, forced into policy. Trump is doing what he's paid to do and what U.S. policy on some level demands. He's backing his proxy and is trying to allow his proxy to take the blame for what is happening in the Middle East in order to create some level of fake distance between the United States and Israel. Max should know better. Max should know better. Let me go to chat real quick. This is JM. Well, shout out to you, JM. Thank you for that. Kwame, Spirit Warrior. You, there we are. You much overstate this Epstein files connection to Israel and the United States rejected politicians and the Zionist control of global private banking system. Let me read that one more time. I want to make sure I get it right. You overstate. I just say you must. Okay, is this you must understand or you much overstate? Okay, I'm going to say you must understand. I'm going to go with that. The Epstein file connection to Israel and the United States selected politicians and the Zionist control of global private banking system. Well, look, the Epstein thing is a big deal, especially if you have a state that is able to blackmail politicians in your own state in order to have some level of control based on the information that they have at their disposal. That is obviously a big deal. And this was something that came up under the Bill Clinton administration also, right? With the whole Monica Lewinsky thing, with, if I'm not mistaken, Netanyahu bringing this up into Bill Clinton's mind space in a conversation they were having with Bill Clinton under this veiled threat of blackmail of Bill Clinton over the Monica Lewinsky issue. I don't put it past them. I don't, not at all. So no, I don't. I get the connection between it. And either way you look at it, it's a big deal if you have politicians that are effectively functioning at the behest of other states. Take out Epstein, just the very act of the way these people are acting in relation to Israel first, as opposed to US first policy. All of these things are big deals. Whether Epstein is a part of this or not, it's still a huge deal. So Spirit warrior. No, agreed. You have my agreement. You have my agreement. You have my agreement. Please don't lump China in with your rogue mafia government. I have not lumped China in with rogue mafia governments. Never mentioned it at all. I don't think I've even mentioned China once. It's called treason. Joseph, it is called treason. It is literal treason. That's the word for it. That is exactly the word for it. Okay, we have one more story. Let's do one more story. Fox News. Fox News. So the right has been screaming bloody murder about lefties killing people. Okay. Again, as I pointed out before, more of these killings are done by the right wing, but okay. Fox News, Brian Kilmeade specifically, needs to be fired. Brian Kilmeade needs to be fired. Why do I say Brian Kilmeade needs to be fired? Typically, I wouldn't say he needs to be fired. I love that he said this. I want to know who my monsters are. I don't want my monsters hiding behind a mask. I want to know exactly who they are, because when they put out a point of view, I would like to be able to say, well, that guy's a monster. That point of view is not necessarily a shocking thing. Well, Brian Kilmeade exposed himself in grand Fox News-ish terms that I strongly suspect that many of the people who watch Fox News probably even agree with him. He came out with an apology after this, but I don't even know why he gave the apology, considering I would wager to you that many of the people who watch Fox News completely, ideologically, firmly agree with what he is about to say.
Just kill him.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this?
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right.
Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? I'm going to play it one more time. I want you to be very clear on what this degenerate said. I'm going to play it one more time.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Involuntary lethal injection, or just kill him. By the way, both of those are the same thing. Both of those are the same thing. Involuntary lethal injection. And a conversation about the homeless and the problem associated with homelessness. Personally, I'd say just get these people homes, but whatever. In the context of, we have all of these homeless people. We need to do something about these homeless people. The homeless people don't want to take the help. They don't want to take the services, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what the help and those services are, but whatever. Fox News apparently, they push the stuff out. And Kilmeade responses, just kill them all. Just kill them all. Why are we even doing this? Just kill them. Just murder them. Okay, Brian, are you going to be the one to take that shot? Nobody's stopping you, Brian, from going out and murdering homeless people. You could do that. You could be the first guy to start it. That seems to be what you want to take place. Or is this Kilmeade wanting big government to do it? Meaning Brian doesn't want to do it himself. He doesn't have the stones to do it. He wants to pay a government worker a minimum wage to go out and murder homeless people. That is an astonishing thing that Fox News allowed to air on their airways. It's not whether Brian Kilmeade said it or believes it. He probably does believe it. Better just to murder the homeless, the poor. I'm rich. Why do I care? Just murder them all. Just get rid of them. I don't want to step over a homeless guy when I'm getting into my limo to get my cappuccino at Starbucks. I don't. It bothers me to have to look at that level of poverty and misery. So yeah, if you could just find a government worker to go out and kill them all, Brian Kilmeade would be okay with that. That is an astonishing thing to air on Fox News. And I don't know how you have an apology after that saying, hey, I'm sorry that I wanted to murder homeless people. My bad. I was in the flow of the conversation and I thought that's where he was going with it. And so, I just jumped ahead of him and said, just murder them all, kill all the homeless people. And so I apologize for that. I'm Brian Kilmeade. Is that apology sufficient? Is that apology sufficient? again, I like my monsters to announce that they're monsters. That's the way my mind works, right? I want to know that guy is a monster. I don't want that guy to be a vampire and hiding in broad daylight. I want to know that my monsters are monsters. So when Brian Kilmeade says something like this, I appreciate him for doing so. I appreciate him for doing so. By the same token, it's a secondary question of whether or not a network should have a sociopath or a psychopath, openly psychopathic, on their airwaves, who is openly advocating on their network to kill all homeless people, which is what Brian just did. He said, kill them all. Kill them. Get rid of them. I don't want to have to see a homeless person when I get my Starbucks. Kill them. Just kill them. I'm Brian Kilmeade. Now, the right wing has been going around making lists of people who they want to effectively get fired from their jobs. Anybody who said something impolite about Charlie Kirk, regardless of the form, they want to get a list and they want to get those people fired. Because in their mind, oh, they besmirched the reputation of a degenerate racist. How dare they? How dare they? He was a hero. He was my hero. Why are you talking so bad about Charlie Kirk? I'm not talking bad about Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk said all of that shit. You have reams, oceans of videos where people have all of this stuff to say about Charlie Kirk without saying anything that Charlie Kirk has ever said in real reality-based terms. Racist, degenerate, sexist, homophobe, etc. There is a litany of adjectives that can be used. When somebody articulates this honestly and can even show video of him being this person, they get offended by it, which on some level gives some context to who they are. Right. My point is this. How do you have lists of people who besmirched the reputation of a man with an already besmirched reputation, and yet Kilmeade is still on air, hasn't been fired, and from my understanding, nobody has created a list saying fire Kilmeade for wanting to murder homeless people? How? How does that work? Where's the right wing with their Kilmeade lists saying, oh my God, Kilmeade wants to murder homeless people. We need to get him off air immediately. They are making an argument that Donald Trump or that people or the things that the left wing has said caused the death of Charlie Kirk. Nonsense. A white guy with a gun caused the death of Charlie Kirk. No more, no less. No more, no less. Kilmeade, however, it's not just making innuendo. Kilmeade is not just giving this kind of dog whistle. He is openly calling for the murder of human beings. And he's doing so on Fox News. Fox News being the largest media network in the United States. Where's the list? Where are the screaming right-wingers who feel some kind of way about innuendo and things that people said about Charlie Kirk that apparently, in their minds, got him killed? They didn't call for Charlie Kirk's death. Kilmeade is calling for the death of tens of thousands. We have hundreds of thousands of homeless people in the United States. 300,000 in California alone, give or take. How many in New York? I don't know, but obviously it's going to be a huge amount. How many in DC? A huge amount. I lived in DC. I know. And Kilmeade, kill them all. Kill them all. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I suspect if Kilmeade is not fired, it's because for all intents and purposes, his viewers agree. And this virtue signaling that has taken place on the right about the Charlie Kirk stuff, just stop. Just stop. It's pathetic. And you expose yourself when you're pushing this stuff out about Charlie Kirk being some kind of civil rights icon, some kind of hero, or this other nonsense. He was a dude that Patrick Henderson was right, was a mouthpiece of the people that were paying him. No more, no less. It is wrong that somebody murdered him. Full stop. There is nothing behind that. There's not a but or anything else. Obviously, he shouldn't have been murdered for being a degenerate human being. But a civil rights icon, you've lost your mind. You've lost your ever-loving mind. Warwick is a great guest, but the biggest problem with the debt is that it ends up consuming an ever-increasing portion of the public spending, crowding out other services. Who wrote this? Who wrote this? Jaya Joe. That's one of the big problems. Yeah. I mean, you have to service that debt, right? And I guess that was my thing with him. It's like, So we're going to be $100 trillion in debt? That just seems wrong. Dead wrong. Political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, co-host of TMI with the great, the one and only man. You also have a show with John Kiriakou that for whatever reason I can never remember the name of. What is the name of the show, Ted? And when does that show appear?
It's called Deprogram, 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time.
I wanted to say decoding. That's why I didn't say anything. Because I was like, okay, decoding sounds wrong.
Decoding sounds good. I like it.
You like it? How you doing, man? You doing okay?
I'm okay. How are you?
I am doing all right. I'm doing all right. I was going into the Brian Kilmeade thing. I don't know if you've seen this. I want to play this for you because I want to get your take on it.
Great.
All of these right-wingers are making lists now saying, oh my God, somebody said something bad about Charlie Kirk that got Charlie Kirk killed. Okay, whatever, man. There's that. Kilmeade goes on Fox News and says this about the homeless. And I would imagine Fox News is probably in New York, so they're in your part of town. Listen to what he says.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get?
Shout outs for the black prop that they got sitting there. There's that. 2, Kilmeade making the argument, just kill them all. Just kill them. Lethal injection, involuntary lethal injection, kill them all. Now, he apologized for that. But my point of view is, why are you apologizing for that? That's your real point of view. And as I keep pointing out, I like my sociopaths or psychopaths to let me know that they're psychopaths in advance. Give me your thoughts, Ted. What are you thinking?
Well, look, as someone who yaps for a living, as do you, I'm sympathetic. I think we have to have the right to say stupid shit and then retract it by apologizing for it. So, if he withdrew it, he apologized, and it's a little bit sophistry to say, well, he doesn't really mean it. If he apologizes, what more do you want, right? Pound of flesh. Obviously, it's not the kind of shit that most people think or much less say. It's really crazy. But, if he apologized, I don't think he should be fired or anything like that. I think, let him keep talking. But it is an insane thought. And it sort of shows like how in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, how, the right wing is really, they're psyched, man. They're happy that Charlie Kirk got killed. This is a big opportunity for them. This is an opportunity for them the way that October 7th was an opportunity for Israel. They're loving it. They're working this angle. It is in the same way that the Israelis say that the war began on October 7th. Poor innocent Israel minding its own business, not doing any harm to all. Then the mean Palestinians suddenly started picking on them for no good reason on October 7th, 2023, for the very first time ever. And the Israelis just had to defend themselves. That's what the right-wingers are acting like now. They're like, oh, like this political violence. Like, what's with that? Like, oh my God, all we wanted to do was talk to the left and engage them and talk to them peacefully. We never threatened them. We never censored them. We don't believe in cancel culture. But since they're doing this, now let's censor them and let's attack them. It's a war. Never mind, the facts, which are that, first of all, this is one guy who killed Charlie Kirk. It's not part of some fucking terror cell or any kind of, there's no co-conspirators. There's no organization. It's a lone gunman by definition. It's a lone wolf. But on top of that, never mind the fact that right-wingers kill a lot more left-wingers than the other way around. And let me tell you, as someone who's been censored, canceled, threatened with death repeatedly, had to have my own FBI protection repeatedly. It's like, let me tell you, like, the violence mostly goes from right to left, not from left to right. And the statistics bear that out, even from right-wing organizations like the ADL. Even they admit that. So they're just making shit up. And unfortunately, liberals, Democrats, progressives, we're not standing up loud enough and just being like, you guys are lying sacks of shit. And you guys are psyched that Charlie Kirk is dead. This is like, you guys are working it. And it's absurd. We should just be like, you guys are ridiculous and you look ridiculous. And it's like, I mean, basically this is what they're like, is like the steroided goon cops who beat up suspects who are on the ground, handcuffed, with 3 dudes standing on top of them. And they're like, boom, boom, stop resisting, stop resisting. And the guy's like, I'm not resisting. I'm handcuffed. I'm on the ground. I can't breathe. Stop resisting. That's what they're doing. I mean, they're working it. And like, you know, we have to have this conversation. Like, anything they have to say is to be taken seriously. It's a joke, and should be called out.
Yeah, and I have been. I hate both because both have been trying to use this as a political cudgel. But the right wing seem to be glorifying his death. They seem to, on some level, like it because they can use him and fashion him in a way that he couldn't necessarily been fashioned in real life. Killing me, though, I think I disagree with you on that. The right wing has been running around, and I didn't make this case. They made this case. The right wing has been running around taking lists of people to get them fired when they said anything bad about Charlie Kirk. And it's like, dude, he was a degenerate, racist human being. What good can you say about him if you're not a degenerate, racist, homophobe, anti-immigrant person? There is not much you can say good about him. Now, the right has been raising him to this level of a civil rights leader, which tells me more about them than it does about Charlie Kirk. Exactly. That's my point. So they've been running around trying to get
the
people
guy was
fired.
the guy was a mega douche. Okay, I mean, and like, if that said, mega douches shouldn't be shot in the neck while giving speeches on college.
Absolutely.
Campuses.
Agreed.
Douchery is not a capital offense.
Agreed. Yeah, you can be a degenerate human being. It's allowed in the First Amendment, right?
Yeah.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is their argument, the thesis that they have been running with, and even the argument that Donald Trump is trying to make, because Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Vance, Carlson, all of these people are going to be speakers at his funeral. They are making the argument that left-wing violence and the things that the left wing says was the reason for Charlie Kirk being murdered. Okay.
Ridiculous.
If that is your argument, killing me, they're saying innuendo is enough. Now, I can play the speeches of Trump. I can play the speeches of even Charlie Kirk, who thought it was funny that Nancy Pelosi's husband got beat with a hammer nearly with an inch of his life. Meaning, Kirk was a defender of the Second Amendment and even argued that if kids get killed, that is worth having a Second Amendment. Okay. He was a strong defender of the Second Amendment. They're saying hate speech was the reason for being killed. Well, Charlie Kirk said there is no such thing as hate speech. Meaning there's a quote for pretty much everything that they've been attacking the left on. I'm trying to make the point of saying Killamede wasn't just using innuendo. He is openly calling for the murder of homeless people.
Right. And homeless people, and let's be clear here, right? Homeless people are the ultimate victims of capitalism. Literally. Yes. I mean, and so they're not people we should look down on. They are the reason we should look down upon ourselves as a society. That we're not, I mean, failure is too good for it. We are deliberately letting people sleep outside and starve to death and die and get diseases because we don't want to house them. In a city where, NPR reported recently that over half of all rent-stabilized apartments are warehoused empty because landlords don't want to rent them. And so this is like while people are sleeping outside. I mean, think of the absurdity. There's no housing shortage at all, right? I mean, the city's empty, really. Yeah. No one lives here, really. I'm not sure there's 8 million people here. There might be 4. And so it's so to look at those people with contempt. No, we should be looking at them with compassion. I mean, these people, a lot of them call themselves Christians. I mean, what did Christ say? Take people into your home, house them, take the poor, give them clothes, give them a roof over their head, give them food and water. I mean, that's not, that's not what these people are all about at all. No. Look, I do agree that, that people don't really have a right to sleep outside if there's good, safe, decent housing and care available for them indoors. there isn't, right? So there's a big if here. The shelters aren't safe. They're terrible. If we were to create a really great infrastructure to bring people in, rehabilitate them, maybe help them with substance abuse problems or mental health issues, if those exist. In some cases, they do. It's like, in that case, it's like, look, I'm sorry, it's 10 degrees below zero. I want the NYPD. I don't want the NYPD. I want social workers to go out, but kind of like ultimately, like, you are coming with us, and then bring them into these new facilities. But these facilities don't exist now. So, so it's kind of like you have to spend, hundreds of millions of dollars to create these spaces. I would start by creating these spaces with eminent domain and seizing these empty apartments that are being warehoused. It's like, look, if a landlord doesn't, like in a rural community, if a house is abandoned, eminent domain will seize that house and either tear it down or rehabilitate or use it for something.
It's not that simple, Ted.
And that's what they should do in a city. Like,
it's not that simple.
If you're not using it, if you don't want to use it, let me use it. I'll use it.
It's not that simple. And I didn't know this until talking to Malik. And what Malik pointed out was that there are zones, and the way that the buildings and everything else, and let's say DC, let's use DC as an example, that there are areas and zones where certain properties can be built and certain properties won't be built. And then in areas where they may build a shelter, you get liberals screaming, not in my backyard. I don't want these people on drugs. I don't want these people who are mentally ill living near me in a way where I have an apartment, I pay X amount for the apartment, and you stick somebody with a mental illness into the other apartment. That is the way people think, right? And so it's like, some of the zoning laws don't allow you to build certain facilities in certain areas. Okay, so that might need to be scrapped. 2, people are going to take issue with.
By the way, New York City doesn't have zoning like that.
Oh, they don't. See, DC does.
You can put a homeless shelter anywhere.
And he even made the point that when they go to people and say, well, look, we're going to move you to this location, they're like, I don't want to go. I live here. Meaning the people would just say, I don't want to go. I don't want to move into the boonies. I don't want to move into the suburbs or wherever you're trying to take me.
Well, I don't know that we should. I mean, in New York City, anyway, you don't have to move people to the suburbs. I mean, the biggest vacancy rate in New York City is in the most expensive zip code on the entire East Coast of the United States.
Billionaires Row?
Yeah, 5th, Madison, and Park Avenues in Midtown and on the Upper East Side are empty. Nobody lives there. It's all just, it's like, I think their occupancy rate is like 20% or 12%. Wow. It's literally all secondary and tertiary homes. It's investment properties for foreigners. It's Chinese people, it's Saudis, it's Russians. It used to be Russians. So nobody lives there. And if nobody lives there, I don't have any problem violating the civil rights of a homeless person who, I'm like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to live at Park and 56th Street in this doorman building. It's 5 in the morning. It's 5 degrees outside. You're not sleeping out here. You're gonna come here and moving on up to a deluxe apartment on the east side, right? That's what we're gonna do here. So, and I mean, but the point is that, like, you have to create the infrastructure, and but I'm saying you can. In New York, you can. I mean, I understand what Malik is saying about DC, but and there's certainly, look, the plan is always like, we're gonna grab these people and send them out way to the sticks, Staten Island or Canarsie, outer Brooklyn. I know, but that's not what we should be doing. I mean, really.
No, I accept that. Yes, agreed. I think, was it Nevada? They had that program where they were.
I don't like warehouse departments. I don't like warehouse departments in a place with high rents.
Well, I didn't think they were warehouse. From my understanding, in Nevada, it was this almost like a camp, and they had people with drug abuse, psychiatrists. All of these things were kind of on standby, like right there in the spot. People, they weren't forced to go to the place, but if they did go to the place, they couldn't use drugs when they were at the place. Meaning, the entire point of the place was to get people back on their feet. Yeah, no, I like the dorm idea. Basically, it's like where you have all the help, on site, and you're going to have to triage these people, based on how, what kind of problems they have. Some people, all they really seriously need is just a place to live. That's it. Yes. And hook them up with a job, help them find a job. They're off and running. I've seen that. But
Other people are a hot mess, and then there's gradients in between.
Agreed.
And so, some people will never be able to work, and that's okay. We don't need everyone to work. We don't have a room for, we don't have a system that's created for full employment, and we don't need it.
Agreed. No, 1,000% agreed. See, that's always the most challenging argument for the left, right? It says if a person doesn't want to work, should society help those people either way? My answer is yes. I don't want people living on the streets. In fact, I would be willing to pay somebody to do nothing as opposed to doing something that's harmful to society as a whole.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
not everybody agrees with that.
If you paid me the same salary to work versus not work, I'd choose to work because look at, and if you don't believe me, look at prisoners. I mean, they're basically not paid, right? I mean, they're paid nominal sums, like cents, literally. They all choose to, everyone's got a job in prison, even in prison systems where it's not required. Everyone wants a job, gets them out of their cell, gives them something to do. That's what human beings want. They want to be useful.
Agreed. No, 1,000% agree. I don't buy this argument that people don't want to work. They're just be lazy. I don't buy that premise at all.
Very few.
Yes. No, I agree. There would be a percentage, obviously, but I don't entirely care about that percentage until it gets to the point where it handicaps the society. To make the point that you were making about ideological balance, the economists put this chart up. The red represents the right wing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're the main purveyors of political violence in the United States.
Yes. And of dehumanizing rhetoric. I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday, Jamal. Like, in terms of, so there's you and I have often decried like Trump derangement syndrome and like just the ridiculous rhetoric that comes out of the Democrats about how Trump is Hitler and the devil incarnate and all this stuff. But it is true that there is a difference between right-wing demonization of liberals, the left, progressives, etc., and left and the opposite. And the difference is that for the right stuff, when the right does it, it's very personal and it's very existential. So the threats basically the fear-mongering basically goes along the lines of the left wants to rape your children, force them to transition to another gender, get rid of God, your religion.
They want to kill God.
Go into your house, remove your guns if you have any, and if you don't have any, they're going to look around for your guns and they're going to rape your wife while they're there. But it's personal. It's existential. Like they're coming to take away the things that you love. They're coming into your house. They're going to fuck with your life.
Yeah.
Liberals, and this is part of the reason why liberals are not as effective in communicating as the right. Their shit is airy and theoretical, and they'll be like, democracy is in danger. Our norms, our rules-based order, which are all words that don't mean anything, and so there are these airy conceptual threats, so the way we've always done things is in danger, and everyone's like, so. It's like, no one cares. It's like I don't care about democracy. I don't think we have a democracy now. So
no, I don't think we do either.
So nobody cares. So I think that's different. I mean, when Democrats are agitated about Donald Trump, it's because they hate his style, his attitude, his rhetoric, his crassness. When they see MAGA people, they think they're tacky, they're gross, they're dumb, they're uneducated.
Yeah.
When MAGA people are looking at the left, they're thinking these leftists, they're coming for us. They want to hurt us and the people we love. That's different. I mean, it's like if I were fear-mongering from the left to the right the way that they do, I'd say, listen, whiteys, you think their ICE is gonna not come for you when they're done with all the people of color? They are. They're gonna send you to a fucking gulag, and they're gonna send you to fucking El Salvador, and you and your kids are gonna be beaten to death in fucking South Sudan. I mean, but that's not like, and I kind of think that's true. But
that's not the way they talk about it.
But they're not. But they don't. Nobody talks like that. So.
No.
So it is different, and I think that's why, it triggers insane people on the right get triggered more, because there's this constant din of like, the left is coming to kill you kind of rhetoric, as opposed to the other side,
which they've been ratcheting it up even to like 12 recently.
And by the way, and again, this is really not to say that I'm okay with, a lot of the stuff that like liberals say about Republicans and stuff. A lot of it's just stupid, and it's a lot of it is
ineffective.
Wrong.
Yeah, and ineffective. Yeah. Sonny, I gotta hit this one. Sonny Tony. So we are forced to work. Yes, you are forced to work. You cannot look, even if you had a plot of land and you took that plot of land and built grapes and bananas and everything else, you just kind of lived off subsistence. There will be a tax man that will come to your house and knock on your door and ask you for taxes.
Yeah, and your property taxes.
Yes, at the very least, your property taxes.
If you're an aristocrat and you inherited a plot of land that produces beautiful food that you could live off of, they're going to tax you.
They're going to tax you for it. It's just the way it works. The entire point of it is for you to be within the system. There is, unless you're living in the boonies in the desert somewhere.
Yep.
Yes, you are forced to earn something where you can pay that tax man to leave you alone. There's always a veiled gun behind it. The libertarians are not wrong.
They're not wrong.
No, there's always a gun behind the tax man that is going to take your stuff one way or the other. So yes, you're forced to work. You're forced to be a part of this particular political system.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, they've been ratcheting that stuff up to 12. And I keep wondering, it's like, okay, well, what are you trying to do with this? Like, what is the objective here? Like, you can try to deify Charlie Kirk, okay.
Yeah, they're trying to do that. Oh my God, the memes of like, Jesus hugging him and
oh God, it's so gross.
Give me a fucking break.
It's so gross. And to make it even worse,
they want to make his birthday a national holiday, and I'm like, hey, can we have like, how about if we're going to do that? Can we have like 65,000 national holidays for all the Gazans that have been killed by the Israelis? I mean, that'll be great. We'll never have to work.
Well, you saw that the number, Albanese was talking about that number being 680,000. And her point was, there's no way to confirm it or deny it because nobody is on the ground where they can actually detail it one way or the other. And even if the number is half of that, that is grotesque.
It's got to be about, I think you're looking at about 300 to 400,000 people. It's got to be.
Right. Out of 2.2 million. We're talking about like 20%, if not higher. It's
got to
just
be.
Astonishing numbers.
It's just got to be. I mean, so many people don't leave their homes in situations like this. And then the building is crumbled and their bodies are underneath the rubble.
I want to show you where I think Trump is taking this. So this is, and the reason why they're echoing this, because if you look at the political branch, they're echoing the same sentiment over and over and over again. He already has military, by the way, in U.S. cities. There's that.
Yep.
And then this.
And then women, in many cases, women, you can see the professional agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4 the other night, all in one group, total phonies. And started to scream when I got into a restaurant, something with Palestine. I said, well, I'm doing a great job for peace in the Middle East. I should get lots of awards for that, right? With the Abraham Accords and everything else. But a woman just stood up and started screaming. And she got booed out of the place, too. There were a lot of people in the restaurant. I went there to show how safe, and it was safe. I mean, the woman is just a mouthpiece. All she was a paid agitator. And you have a lot of them. And I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against the criminal RICO, because they should be put in jail.
Do you know who he's talking about? Code Pink.
I know about this. Yeah.
He's talking about Code Pink. Code Pink, talking about Code Pink as a paid agitator. Code Pink has been doing this task and this job for God knows how long at this particular point. I've had
to both Democrats and Republicans, I might add.
Yes, they don't care which, right? Their whole thing is you're murdering people in Gaza. That's what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And the Abraham Accords is just this way of Israeli supremacy in the region. It's nonsense that this is some kind of peace thing. I mean, is this where you think they're going with this? I mean, he's told a reporter the other day, well, maybe we should investigate you because you're at ABC and you say bad things about me, and that's hate speech. Or Charlie Kirk said there is no such thing as hate speech.
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as Antifa, by the way. I mean, Antifa does not exist. There's a tendency. There's some people who dress up in black sometimes and go to protests. Antifa organization. There's no
right,
and there's no, you can't get a membership card. There's no meetings, online or offline. It's just not true. It's a fever dream of the right. These terror cells, and I mean, they're trying to capitalize on the ignorance, I think, of the American people in general, but also, certainly of conservative adherents, where they're looking for Soviets under the bed, and they're really worried. They're seriously scared, and it's unconscionable. It's really dangerous, right? I mean, if you talk about, you want to talk about dangerous political rhetoric, here it is. I mean, this right now, this is the ultimate, I know what I am, but I know what you are, but what am I kind of moment, right? I mean, the very people who are yelling the loudest about political violence are themselves, in that process, guilty of spreading very dangerous rhetoric, that encourages political violence. It's terrifying, actually.
Yeah, and it starts at the top with the president. Ted, I'm going to let you go because we're hitting the 10 o'clock and you have the show to do. Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, co-host Manila Chan's TMI with the co-host Manila Chan and Ted Rall. They will start up at 10 a.m., so they're going to start right now. Ted, and deprogram with John Kariakou. You're fantastic.
5 o'clock Eastern time. Yeah.
Oh, what time is it?
At 5 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday.
5 o'clock Eastern.
Cool.
Have a good one, man. Enjoy your show. Have a good show.
Thanks, Ron. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. We have come to the end. We have come to the end. There is another chat. Let's see. This is Trulio. Oh, dude, you're going to fuck me with this name. Pontacaloni. Tulio Pontacaloni. I think I nailed that. Shrinking the size of the jar for us, useless eaters, and shaking it on purpose to start civil war to distraction from the failed government. From failed government, Epstein, Israel, by design. Kick the can far down the road. What is this? Saluted? What's that word? I can't see that word. They stole it? Oh, they stole it all. I think that's what they said. For some reason, it's not showing up on mine. Let's read this one more time. Shrinking the size of the jar for us useless eaters and shaking it on purpose to start a civil war to distract from the fallout of failure of government, Epstein, and Israel by design. Kick the can far down the road or too far down the road. They stole it. That seems to be the point of view of a lot of people, that for all intents and purposes, the more sophisticated machines get, the less people you need to do the work, the less people you need to do the labor. These people are useless eaters. You're pricing them out of the economy. The government doesn't seem to have the capability of, let's say, adjusting to the new reality that less work is necessary, in which case you have a lot of people who are not going to have jobs, who are going to cause all sorts of problems because they're not necessarily going to have jobs and not going to have the ability to pay for themselves. Can you really see something like a UBI in our current system? No. What you have are plutocrats that want to make more and more money. So yeah, they're going to raid Medicaid in order to take like $1 trillion out of Medicaid to give themselves more cash. Yeah, they're going to raid SNAP benefits, effectively feeding poor children, again, to give themselves more. This is not about us. They don't care about us in the real sense of the word. They care about their wars. They're giving Israel billions of dollars. And yet we have these people living on the streets. Streets, by the way, the Kilamid just wants to murder them all, as opposed to actually having government work and do its goddamn job and find those people homes or find a solution to that particular issue. Agreed that for all intents and purposes, what it looks like is if they're throwing chum in the water. But they better be careful. Civil wars don't always end out like you plan. And I would tell you, many lefties like like Daniel Lazare, when he's making that argument that the working class at some point is going to get pissed off, that is effectively a war. That's a revolutionary war. That's a change of order. Now, that could go either way, right? You can end up with a situation where we're worse off, or you can end up with something better off. But either way, that is a dangerous, dangerous policy if that is indeed what they're trying to do. It does seem like they're trying to use the Charlie Kirk thing as a cudgel. And the rhetoric coming out of the White House and from the Trump administration doesn't make it any better. In fact, it makes it dramatically worse. Agreed, Tulio. You have my full agreement on that one. Let's come back. Let's say no to Israel. Will 2023, well, as I pointed out, the majority of the population has said no to Israel. Hasn't seemed to matter to a political instrument that is Israel first. So yeah, brave. Ted, come back. Ted, you got to get ready for TMI and wrap that gavel up. Brave, I was paying attention. I was aware. In fact, I had my time up. And when I saw that thing hit like 9:55, I was like, all right, got to close it. But Brave, thank you. Because sometimes I fuck up and I miss it myself. So shout out to you, Brave, for being aware. Pink Rose, Code Pink, got to him. I love it. So do I. I met Code Pink when I was in California. We were having the Summit of Americas. The radio station sent me to cover it. The radio station used to send me everywhere because I used to love traveling. And so any rando place that they wanted to send me, hell, I wanted them to send me to Donbass of all places. I wanted them to send me to the war zone. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. I wanted to talk to the people. My feeling was, I've met one person from Donbass, and it shapes my point of view of that war. She was living in, I think, South Carolina. She was working in a store, like a little corner store in South Carolina, selling like knickknacks. Somehow I got into a conversation with her. This was before I even understood what was taking place in the Donbass. And she pointed out, she says, look, I just wanted to stop. And she says, I speak Russian. And she's saying this in a sheepish way because I think her thought is, he's an American, he's not going to quite get it. I was apolitical about it. And so I was just an open vessel. I just wanted to understand what was taking place. And she says, I have family members. I have my teachers are living in bomb shelters. My family is living in bomb shelters. She said my mom would have to go out to get food every so often. And obviously what she's talking about is the bombing by Ukraine, where they murdered 14,000, 15,000 people after the government was overthrown. And they started effectively bombing the regions that decided to leave. And of course, those regions decided to leave because if your government was fundamentally overthrown, then it's no longer America. It is something else. Trump-Afghanistan, or whatever the hell you want to call it, but you can't call it America at that point. At that point, this contract, the social contract, this relationship that we have under US law is now obliterated because there is no US law. You effectively have a government that is taken over in a coup attempt. Nobody voted that government in. It has no legitimacy at all. So they have every right to say, I'm out. We're done. We don't want to be part of a Nazi government as Russians who had to deal with the Nazi scourge once before in history. So for that government to turn around and start murdering those people in mass is outrageous. And that was her point. My own government was murdering us. My own government was murdering us. Yes, I would have been perfectly open for them sending me to a war zone. Instead, I think they sent Wyatt. And Wyatt almost got killed. So there's that. There is that. All right, I am going to call this a day. We have come to the end. We've come to the end. Will, I'm quite curious about what's going on there. Well, at this point, the Russians are kicking ass and taking names. They're moving on all fronts. Ukraine doesn't have enough manpower to fill the gaps and to fill the holes in their lines. And they are suffering as a direct result for it, not to mention the number of desertions that are taking place on the battlefield. When Mark comes back on, he can give a battleground breakdown. But to say this is not going well is an understatement. It's a complete and entire understatement. All right. I am going to call this a day. I'm going to call this a day. Oh, what is this? What is this? What is this? That's the same argument that CSA used against the union, Jamal. Well, maybe, but it is true in my case. The argument I'm making is true. The argument I'm making is true. Confederate. I met this woman in Longwood. She was in Longwood. It was my first, I had just got to school, 17 years old. She was 17 years old. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. And gorgeous in a way that is unnerving for a guy. What do I mean by that? I need to explain that. It's one thing to be gorgeous at a distance. Oh, that person is attractive. It's another thing to be gorgeous in a way where it is flaunted heavily. And I don't know, it's unnerving. I mean, keep in mind, at 17, for one, I was a fat kid. There was that. I was a fat kid up to the age of like 16. There was that. To go from a fat kid to losing 100 and some pounds is an interesting experience, and it's a weird experience because you immediately become attractive to women that you were attracted to at one point, or girls you were attracted to at one point. But me, being spiteful, you weren't interested in me when I was a fatty, don't be interested in me now. And so it was always a little bit weird, and it was a learning curve, getting accustomed to that. And when you go to school and college, it's the same thing. It's still the same learning curve. It was still soon. Within the first week, we had a co-ed dorm. When the first week, I was sleeping with the woman from across the hall, the girl from across the hall. So I had hooked up very quickly. And within a week, we had hooked up. And that went to shit over the course of the school year because you don't know that person. You just hooked up with that person. But that being said, what is her name? I can't think of her name. Her name doesn't matter. But very flirtatious in the way that she would engage. But it wasn't like, in my mind, it was like, why is she flirting this hard? Is this, I'm flirting for compliments? What the fuck is happening right now, right? This is just not the way I function. That's not the way I think. One day, I remember I am eating an ice cream cone or what is those things called? Those ices or whatever those things. She comes out the blue and just bites into my icy. And I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Why are you doing this? There was another day. And there's so many of these moments that it was so off-putting, and I couldn't place it. I didn't have a place to put it in. I didn't have a box to put it in. I didn't know what was taking place. Are you being flirtatious for the sake of being flirtatious? Are you coming on to me? I can't tell which one of these things are taking place right now. And so your response is just kind of like, okay, that's weird. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I didn't know how to respond to that. There was another case where she comes in a shirt and panties into my dorm room. And again, I'm looking at this like, whoa, this is intense. What the fuck is happening here? I was bewildered by the whole thing. I was bewildered. I was completely bewildered. Yeah, it was weird. It was very weird. All right. Yes, my college experience was interesting. To keep in mind, at 17, I had just been diagnosed with kidney failure. I was always had a bias towards independence, a severe bias towards independence. And it's like you're going to college immediately after that. And God, that all went to shit fast. All went to shit fast. But you live and you learn. All right. I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say, oh, wait. Let me go through all of the super chats just for good measure. Just to show my appreciation for you giving. JM. Thank you, JM. Shout out to you. Appreciate it. Spirit Warrior. And come on. You must understand that Epstein and the connection to the threat, to Israel and the United States elected politicians and the Zionist control of a global private banking system. Fair enough, Spirit Warrior. We have Java Joe. I haven't been able to get coffee here. They don't have a hot pot here where I can just do coffee in my normal, typical way. And then when I was at the other location, I bought one and then ended up moving out within a couple of days. It's like, God damn it. I couldn't even take it with me. Couldn't fit in my suitcase. Java Joe. I'm sorry. Warwick is a great guess, but the biggest problem with the debt is that it ends up consuming an ever-consuming and ever-increasing portion of the public spending, crowding out other services. Agreed. But there's a problem with that if you pay it off. The U.S. is the only place to get dollars, right? I mean, you get it from banks, I suppose, when they just make money out of thin air. But if you want dollars and you're somewhere around the world or you are in the public sector, only way to get dollars is from the U.S. government. That's the only place. If you pay it off, you are extracting money from the U.S. economy. So in order for the U.S. government to pay off $37 trillion, they would have to extract $37 trillion from the economy of the U.S. and from the rest of the world. That would have severe consequences. Severe consequences. That's why he kept saying, look, the issue is not the debt. You can always pay dollars because anything that's appropriated in dollars, you can always pay those dollars back. You control the Fed in this case. But that's not the way we think about it. I mean, the way we think about it is Jesus. If you have $50 trillion in debt, $100 trillion in debt, you have to pay interest on that money, right? So no, I totally get where you're coming from. I think all of this gets across that the shit just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Tullio Pantacoloni. Shrinking the size of the jobs for us, quote, useless eaters, in the way Mitt Romney called us, and shaking it on purpose to start a civil war to distract from the failure of government, Epstein, Israel. Those are only two. I mean, we can go down the list of things that are failures. By design, kicking the can too far down the road, they stole it all. Well-dressed nerd. Ted, you got to get ready for TMI. Wrap up the gavel. Wrap up that. Yeah, wrap up the gavel. Yeah. He did. And I was paying attention, don't breathe. I was paying attention. Pink Rose, code pink, got to him, love it. So do I. There's something great about that, right? The code pink could get to the president of the United States and scream at him. Yeah, something about that is just fantastic. Longwood was something. Longwood? Oh, yeah, Longwood. Yeah, Longwood was intense. Yeah, Mama Thomas. Mama Thomas knows. One day, Mama Thomas gives me a call and says she's coming to the college. Okay. Mama Thomas gets to the college. Now, I don't know what happened that night. I was dead tired. I was super sleepy. And for whatever reason, I heard the fact that she was downstairs and somehow it dozed back off when the phone hung up. Mama Thomas is let into the college, let upstairs in the dorm, comes to the room, knocks on the door. I open the door and there's a naked woman laying on the bed. And at that point, you're like, hey, you doing all right? Yeah, I'm doing all right. And Mama Thomas, as a good mom, pretended as if there wasn't a naked woman on the bed. And we went outside and talked. The next time I saw her, she comes to the college. She's like, hey, I just wanted to give you this rolls of condoms. Use them wisely. Just be aware. Hint, hint. And in which way? Thank you for the condoms. Apologize for the naked woman being on the bed. Sleep. Et cetera, et cetera. Yes, Longwood was something. Not to mention the whole medical stuff, where it's like, yeah, Longwood was intense. Longwood was it was intense. It was a learning experience. Jinho Choi, member for, what is it, 6 months? 5 months. Thank you, Jinho. Thank you for that. And Jesus Christ, man, you're up this late. It is 10, 11, 12. What, 12 o'clock there in Australia? 9, 10, 11, 12, 12, 13. Jamal, a woman who takes a bite of your food unbidden is requesting to be penetrated. This is known as nonverbal mating ritual. Is that what it is? I didn't know what to think. Honestly, God, I didn't know what to think. Alexa. By the way, I know why I brought her up, and it wasn't because of this. It was the first time talking to her that I heard of the War of Northern Aggression. The War of Northern Aggression. She was a white woman from, I believe, South Carolina, and she had been taught that the North effectively was the aggressor and attacked the South. And they called it the War of Northern Aggression. I was like, what? You mean the Civil War? I was like, is that what you mean? The Civil War? Is that what you guys are being taught? Yeah, she was very attractive. So Jinho Choi, missed opportunities. Yeah. Especially at that age, missed opportunities. Yeah. My experience in Paris always pays off. Yeah, I was just, I don't know, man. It was just awkward. Just got to school. You didn't really know these people. There was this thing in our school too where you had, I don't know how schools are today. I don't know how they are today. There were, let's say, certain desires among groups. They were expressed at those schools. I'll just say it that way. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'm not even going to go into that. I'm not going to dig into that at all. I'll just leave it. All right. War or northern aggression from a woman from Arkansas. Yeah, she was from South Carolina. She was from South Carolina. She was very flirtatious. Very flirtatious. Just was insanely so. Jen Troy, missed opportunity. Missed opportunity. All right, guys, I'm going to end it here. We're just talking shit at this point. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. You guys are fantastic. Snowed in Jamal's room, yeah. Arise, surprise, yeah, right? Yeah. No, Stacy was black. The other chick was white. And at that point, I think I was hooking up with Stacy. Like I said, Stacy and I started hooking up very early. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. Apparently, kids are reluctant to leave their dorms and mingle offline. Really? We used to mingle all the time at school. They used to have events and everything else. How'd you grow up in Richmond and never heard word of Northern aggression? That wasn't what we were taught. We were taught the Civil War. We were taught the Civil War. Keep in mind, Richmond was interesting because Virginia is considered the South, but it's like Northern South, if that makes sense. Our schools were black. You had a racial divide in Virginia. Yeah, we were taught Civil War. We weren't taught this Northern aggression stuff. Democrats, or in Virginia, it tends to go blue, unless Democrats fuck up, in which case it tends to go red. Presidential elections is kind of a bellwether. You can usually determine who the president is going to be based on where Virginia goes, in my experience. So, yeah. All right, capital of the South. Yep, we have Monument Avenue with all of the Confederates, statue after statue after statue after statue, going all the way down Monument Avenue. Didn't even pay attention to it. North Virginia is where DC is located. Yes. Yeah. So, but DC is a district on its own. It's like its own thing. It's not really part of Virginia. It's you get to like Alexandria, what's the other place? Arlington, Alexandria, etc. And at that point, you get to DC, and DC is its own thing. It's the District of Columbia. They didn't want to make it a state, and they didn't want to make it part of a state because they thought too much political capital would be in that state. So they made it its own district. It's like a tiny little lobbyist region that's most of which is a ghetto. And the other part of it is like this little rich enclave. All right, like, share, subscribe. I want to thank all of you for your contribution to the show, whether you like it, share it, subscribe to it, memberships, super chats, Patreons, buy me a coffees, all of those things are deeply appreciated. And all of those things help make the show what it is. The show is often demonetized. So when I say that you guys support the content, I mean it in real literal terms. And I thank you for it. You all have a fantastic day. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Have a good one all. Be safe.